The book of 4 Ezra contains what might be the most brutally honest conversation with God in all of religious literature, and most people have never heard of it. Written after the catastrophic destruction of the Second Temple, this apocalyptic text features a prophet so broken by tragedy that he accuses the Almighty of being unjust and demands answers. What follows is a series of visions so vivid and disturbing that they were considered too dangerous for ordinary believers. From eagles representing world empires to a Messiah breathing fire upon his enemies, 4 Ezra reveals secrets about the end times that were hidden from mainstream Christianity for centuries. Though before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support means we can continue providing content like this. We really appreciate it. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Please introduce yourself, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is. We're here to gather like-minded folks from around the world so you can connect and potentially make new friends with. So without further ado, let's begin, shall we? A Prophet in the Rubble, introducing 4 Ezra. The year is 70 CE. Jerusalem burns. The Second Temple, the heart of Jewish worship, the dwelling place of God on earth, lies in ruins. Roman soldiers have torn down every stone. The sacrifices have stopped. The priests are dead or scattered. And somewhere in this landscape of ash and blood, a scribe sits down to write. His name is Ezra. But this is not the Ezra you might know from the Hebrew Bible. This is not the priest who returned from Babylon centuries earlier to rebuild the community. This is a literary creation, a voice for a shattered people, a man who dares to do what few would attempt in the aftermath of catastrophe. He questions God. The text he produces will become known as 4 Ezra. Some call it the Ezra Apocalypse. Others know it as Sec Esdras. The names shift depending on which tradition preserves it. The content remains explosive. This is not a text you'll find in most Bibles today. It exists in the shadowy space between canon and apocrypha, preserved by Christians but written by Jews, treasured by mystics but studied by scholars. It speaks of visions and angels, of cosmic warfare and the end of days. It asks why the righteous suffer while the wicked prosper. It demands to know why God allowed Rome, brutal pagan Rome, to destroy his chosen people. These are dangerous questions, the kind that could shake faith to its foundations. The author doesn't shy away from them. Instead, he pushes deeper, harder, demanding answers that heaven itself seems reluctant to give. Through 7 visions, he constructs a theology of crisis, a manual for surviving when your world has ended and your God seems silent. Picture the context. The greatest revolt in Jewish history has just collapsed in failure. Hundreds of thousands are dead. The survivors face enslavement, exile, or life under the iron grip of Roman occupation. The temple, the one thing that connected heaven and earth, is gone. How do you worship when the altar is rubble? How do you keep faith when the covenant appears broken? This is the soil from which 4 Ezra grows. It emerges from a community asking whether God has abandoned them, whether the promises made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob still hold, whether being chosen means anything when you're crushed beneath the empire's heel. The text doesn't offer easy comfort. It doesn't promise quick restoration or simple answers. Instead, it takes you on a journey through doubt, anger, despair, and finally, perhaps a strange and difficult hope. Ezra will encounter an angel named Uriel. He will debate divine justice. He will witness visions of eagles and lions, of women transformed into cities, of warriors rising from the sea. He will be given secrets meant only for the wise. And in the end, he will vanish from the earth, leaving behind sacred books that contain both public law and hidden wisdom. But that comes later. First, we must understand what makes this text so unusual, so powerful, and so enduring that it survived 2,000 years despite never quite fitting into anyone's official scripture. 4 Ezra is a text born from trauma. Written in the immediate aftermath of destruction, it captures something raw and real about what happens to faith when history delivers its harshest verdicts. It refuses to pretend everything makes sense. It grants permission to rage, to question, to doubt, and then slowly it builds something new from the ruins. This is the story of that text, its origins, its journey through history, its profound influence on both Jewish and Christian thought, the way it wrestled with questions that still haunt us. Why does evil triumph? Where is justice? How do we hope when hope seems foolish? The prophet in the rubble has something to say. It's time we listened. Manuscripts and Mysteries, The Textual Journey of 4 Ezra Hall. Here's where things get complicated. The book you're reading, if you're reading it at all, isn't the book that was first written. 4 Ezra is a textual puzzle, a manuscript mystery that has kept scholars busy for centuries. To understand it, you need to know that what we call 4 Ezra is actually a composite work, assembled over time from different sources and traditions. Let's break it down. The core text, the part that matters most, consists of chapters 3 through 14. This is the Jewish apocalypse written in the wake of the temple's destruction. This is where Ezra questions God, receives visions, and ultimately ascends to heaven. This is the original, the heart of the matter. But most manuscripts include more. Chapters 1 and 2, sometimes called 5 Ezra, form a Christian edition. They were written later, probably in the 2nd or 3rd century, and they shift the message dramatically. These chapters speak of God rejecting the Jewish people and embracing the Gentiles instead. They transform the text from a Jewish meditation on suffering into a Christian polemic about supersession. Then come chapters 15 and 16, known as 6 Ezra. Another Christian edition, this one probably from the 3rd century. These chapters contain prophecies of coming disasters, warnings about persecution, and calls to faithfulness. They feel different from the core text, more fragmented, less philosophical, urgently apocalyptic in a new way. So when you pick up 4 Ezra in translation, you might actually be reading a 3-part composite: 5 Ezra, 4 Ezra proper, and 6 Ezra. Some editions separate them. Others present them as a unit. The numbering systems shift between traditions, which is why you'll sometimes see this material called 2 Esdras in English Bibles that include the Apocrypha. Confused yet? There's more. The original language of 4 Ezra is lost. Scholars are nearly certain it was written in Hebrew or Aramaic. Both languages were used by Jews in the 1st century. Both would have been natural choices for a text dealing with temple theology and biblical interpretation. But no Hebrew or Aramaic manuscripts survive. Instead, what we have are translations. The primary witness is the Latin version, which became part of the Vulgate appendix in some manuscripts. This Latin text preserves all 16 chapters and became the basis for most modern translations. It's our most complete source, but it's still a translation of a translation. The original was rendered into Greek, then Greek into Latin. We also have versions in Syriac, Ethiopic, Georgian, Armenian, and Arabic. Each tradition preserved the text for its own reasons. Each introduced small changes, interpretive choices, scribal errors. Comparing these versions allows scholars to work backward towards something closer to the original, but it's painstaking work. The Syriac version is particularly valuable. It sometimes preserves readings that seem more original than the Latin. The Ethiopic version includes the text as part of a broader collection of apocalyptic literature, showing how it was read and valued in that tradition. But here's the haunting part. Somewhere in the shifting sands of history, the original Hebrew or Aramaic text disappeared. Maybe it was lost when Jewish communities were destroyed or dispersed. Maybe it was deliberately suppressed because the text's questions were too sharp, too dangerous. Maybe it simply wasn't copied enough times to survive the odds of fire, flood, war, and decay. What saved 4 Ezra was Christian scribes. They found something valuable in this Jewish text. Perhaps they saw in Ezra's anguish a parallel to Christian suffering under Roman persecution. Perhaps they read the visions as prophecies about Christ. Whatever the reason, they copied it, translated it, preserved it, and eventually added their own interpretive frames around it. This creates a strange irony. A deeply Jewish text, written from within the trauma of the temple's destruction, survives primarily because Christians decided it was worth keeping. The community that produced it may have let it fade. The community that inherited it kept it alive. Modern scholarship has worked to peel back the layers, to separate the Jewish core from the Christian additions, to reconstruct as much as possible what the original author intended and how his first readers would have understood his message. This work continues. New manuscript discoveries, better analytical tools, deeper understanding of first-century Judaism, all of these contribute to an evolving picture of what 4 Ezra was and what it meant. But even with all our scholarly apparatus, some mysteries remain. We can't be absolutely certain about the original language. We can't know the exact date of composition, though most scholars place it between 90 and 100 CE. We can't identify the author with certainty beyond the literary persona of Ezra. What we can do is read the text we have, attend to its arguments and visions, listen to its questions, and recognize that this fragile, composite, multi-layered manuscript carries within it one of the most profound meditations on suffering and faith ever written. The prophet's words survived. That's what matters. Now let's see what he had to say. Setting the stage, the historical context of 70 CE. To understand 4 Ezra, you need to feel the weight of 70 CE. You need to grasp what it meant when Rome tore down the temple. This wasn't just a military defeat. It wasn't simply another conquest in Rome's endless expansion. This was the end of the world as Jewish people knew it. The temple stood at the center of everything. It was where God dwelt on earth, where sins were atoned for through sacrifice, where priests maintained the daily rituals that kept the cosmic order intact, where pilgrims gathered 3 times a year to fulfill their obligations, where the high priest entered the Holy of Holies on Yom Kippur to seek forgiveness for the entire nation. Without it, how do you worship? How do you atone? How do you maintain your relationship with the divine? The crisis began in 66 CE. Jewish rebels, frustrated by decades of Roman misrule and oppression, rose up. They drove the Roman garrison from Jerusalem. They minted their own coins, declaring freedom of Zion. For a brief, shining moment, it seemed possible that God would deliver his people as he had in the days of the Maccabees. That hope died in flames. Rome doesn't tolerate rebellion. The empire sent Vespasian, a seasoned general, to crush the revolt. When Vespasian became emperor, his son Titus took over the campaign. The Roman legions were methodical, brutal, efficient. They surrounded Jerusalem, cut off supplies, and waited for starvation to do its work. The Jewish historian Josephus, who witnessed the siege, described horrors almost too terrible to record. People eating leather, searching through dung for undigested food, mothers driven mad by hunger, factional fighting within the city as different rebel groups turned on each other, bodies piling up in the streets. When the legions finally broke through in August of 70 CE, they showed no mercy. They slaughtered whoever remained. They enslaved thousands, and they set fire to the temple. According to Josephus, Titus wanted to preserve the building. It didn't matter. Once the fire started, it consumed everything. The gold decorations melted and ran between the stones. To extract it, soldiers literally tore the temple apart stone by stone. Just as Jesus had reportedly prophesied decades earlier, not one stone left upon another. The destruction rippled outward in ways that reshaped Judaism forever. The Sadducees, the priestly party whose power came from the temple, effectively ceased to exist. The Zealots and their allies were dead or dispersed. The Essenes, if they were indeed the community at Qumran, disappeared from history. What remained were the Pharisees and their intellectual descendants, the early rabbis. These teachers began the long work of reimagining Judaism without its center. They shifted focus from sacrifice to study, from temple to Torah, from priests to sages. The synagogue, once a supplementary institution, became primary. Prayer replaced offering. The table became an altar. This transformation took time. In the decades immediately after 70 CE, no one knew if it would work. No one could be certain Judaism would survive without its temple. Meanwhile, another group was also processing the destruction, the followers of Jesus. For them, the temple's fall carried different meanings. Some saw it as divine judgment on those who rejected the Messiah. Others understood it as confirmation that the old covenant had passed away, replaced by a new one written in blood rather than on stone. The destruction of 70 CE thus became a founding trauma for both Rabbinic Judaism and early Christianity. Both communities were born from the same catastrophe, shaped by the same questions, forced to reimagine their relationship with God in the absence of the place where heaven and earth once touched. This is the world that produces 4 Ezra, a world of raw grief and existential crisis, a world where the fundamental assumptions about how God relates to his people have been shattered, a world where theodicy, the question of divine justice, becomes unavoidable because the evidence of injustice is written in the ashes of the holiest place on earth. The author writes from within this trauma. He channels the questions everyone is asking, but few dare voice so boldly. His Ezra sits in the ruins, though the text places him 30 years after an earlier destruction. The real reference point is unmistakable and demands answers. Why did you let this? Why did you let this happen? Why do the wicked prosper while the righteous suffer? Why give us the law if we can't keep it? Why choose us if you're just going to abandon us? These aren't abstract theological puzzles, they're survival questions. If you can't make sense of what happened, how do you move forward? If you can't find meaning in the suffering, how do you maintain faith? The historical context of 70 CE provides the emotional and intellectual urgency behind every word of 4 Ezra. Without understanding the depth of that crisis, the text's anguish and passion make no sense. But with that understanding, it becomes something more than ancient literature. It becomes a document of human struggle with the oldest, hardest question: where is God when everything falls apart? The dramatis personae, Ezra, Uriel, and the people. Every drama needs its players. In 4 Ezra, the cast is small, but the stakes are cosmic. First, there's Ezra himself, the protagonist, the questioner, the voice of anguish and doubt. He's not the historical Ezra who returned from Babylonian exile to rebuild Jerusalem and restore the Torah. That Ezra lived centuries earlier. This Ezra is a literary creation, a persona carefully chosen for specific reasons. Why Ezra? Because the name carries weight. The historical Ezra was a scribe, a teacher, someone who dealt with law and interpretation. He represented faithfulness to Torah and the possibility of restoration after disaster. By invoking that name, the author signals both continuity and crisis. This new Ezra faces a similar challenge, making sense of destruction, finding a way forward, but the situation is darker, the questions sharper. The text places Ezra in Babylon 30 years after the first temple's destruction. This is fiction. The real setting is the aftermath of 70 CE, but by using the earlier catastrophe as a parallel, the author creates artistic distance. He can speak freely about his own trauma by ostensibly writing about the past. This Ezra is every man. He represents the entire traumatized community. His questions are their questions. His struggle is their struggle. He doesn't have special knowledge or unique qualifications. He's simply someone trying to understand why God's promises seem broken. He's anguished, argumentative, persistent. He doesn't accept easy answers. When told he can't understand divine ways, he pushes back. When given theological explanations, he finds the holes in them. He's willing to challenge heaven itself if that's what it takes to get real answers. This makes him unusual in biblical and apocalyptic literature. Most visionaries are shown heavenly secrets and accept them gratefully. Ezra argues, he complains. He refuses to be satisfied with mystery when he wants justice. He's also deeply sympathetic. His pain is genuine. His questions come from love for his people, love for justice, love for the covenant that seems violated. He's not a rebel or a blasphemer. He's a faithful person pushed to his limit. Then there's Uriel, the angel, the interpreter, God's messenger and defender. Uriel's name means God is my light, or fire of God. In Jewish angelic hierarchies, he's often associated with wisdom and interpretation of visions. He's the perfect choice to respond to Ezra's challenges. But Uriel isn't a gentle teacher. He's sharp, sometimes harsh. He dismisses Ezra's capacity to understand. He uses rhetorical questions and impossible tasks to illustrate the limits of human knowledge. Weigh fire, he says. Measure wind. Call back a day that has passed. Uriel represents divine transcendence. He reminds Ezra, and through him, the audience, that human beings can't fully grasp the ways of the Most High. The gap between creator and creature is too vast. Yet Uriel also shows patience. He returns again and again to answer questions. He provides visions when arguments fail. He reveals secrets about the coming age when explanation of the current age proves insufficient. Their relationship is complex. Part teacher-student, part prosecutor-defendant, part therapy session. Uriel pushes Ezra toward a transformation in his thinking, away from trying to understand this corrupt age and toward focusing on the incorrupt age to come. But he's not cruel. He recognizes Ezra's pain. He acknowledges the difficulty of the questions. He simply insists that the answers lie in a different framework than Ezra's starting assumptions allow. Finally, there's the third character, the people. They're barely present in the text, mentioned only briefly, usually as a silent background, but they're crucial. Ezra isn't questioning for himself alone. He's questioning on behalf of the community. His anguish is their anguish. His transformation needs to be something they can share. The people are the silent chorus. They represent the stakes. Everything Ezra learns, he learns for them. Every answer he receives in trust for the community. This communal dimension prevents the text from becoming purely individual or mystical. Ezra doesn't ascend to secret knowledge that separates him from his people. Even when he's given wisdom reserved for the wise, it's wisdom meant to serve the community's survival and restoration. The dramatic structure is thus a triangle. Ezra questions, Uriel responds, and the people wait in the background to see what meaning can be salvaged from catastrophe. There are no villains here, no demons to defeat, no human enemies to overcome. The antagonist, if there is one, is history itself, or perhaps divine providence, which allowed history to deliver such a harsh verdict. The tension comes from whether Ezra can find answers that satisfy not just intellectually, but existentially. Can he discover a framework that makes continued faith possible? Can he transform his understanding enough to move from despair to hope? The characters serve this drama. Ezra embodies the crisis. Uriel embodies the tradition's resources for response. The people embody the necessity of finding a way forward that serves more than just the individual seeker. Together, they create one of ancient literature's most compelling theological debates, not because it resolves neatly, but because it faces the hardest questions with unflinching honesty. The first vision, why God? The question of evil. Now the gloves come off. The first vision begins with Ezra lying on his bed in Babylon. 30 years have passed since the temple's destruction. 3 decades of grief, confusion, and unanswered questions, and Ezra is done being polite. He opens with a prayer, but it's not the kind you'd hear in synagogue. It's a legal brief, an indictment, a challenge thrown at heaven's feet. He starts with creation. God made the world. God chose Adam and gave him a single commandment. Adam broke it, bringing sin and death into the world. Fair enough, that's the traditional story. But then Ezra presses. God gave the law to Adam's descendants through Moses, a covenant relationship. Obedience brings blessing, disobedience brings curse. The terms are clear. So why, Ezra asks, did you let your people suffer under nations that don't even try to follow your law? Here's the heart of his complaint. Babylon destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BCE. Now Rome has done it again. Both empires worshipped false gods. Both committed atrocities. Both were, by any measure, more wicked than the Jewish people. Yet God used them as instruments of punishment. He gave them power over his chosen ones. He allowed the less righteous to crush the more righteous. This doesn't make sense. Ezra builds his case carefully. He acknowledges that the Jewish people sinned. He's not claiming they were perfect, but he insists they were better than their conquerors. They had the law. They tried to follow it. They maintained the covenant, however imperfectly. Meanwhile, Babylon and Rome indulged every vice. They enslaved, murdered, oppressed. They knew nothing of God's law and cared less. So why do they prosper while we suffer? If you're punishing sin, shouldn't the greater sinners receive the greater punishment? If you're measuring righteousness, shouldn't those who have the law fare better than those who don't? The comparison is devastating because it attacks the foundation of covenant theology, the entire framework of Deuteronomy. Obedience brings blessing, disobedience brings curse, seems broken when the disobedient thrive and the obedient are crushed. Ezra isn't questioning whether God exists, he's questioning whether God is just. He's not doubting God's power, he's doubting God's fairness. This is theodicy at its most raw. The technical term barely captures the existential anguish. How do you justify God's goodness when the evidence points toward divine indifference or cruelty? Ezra isn't content with vague appeals to mystery. He wants specifics. He wants an accounting. He wants to know by what standard God judges, because by any human standard of justice, the current arrangement is an outrage. He adds another layer. Not only do the wicked nations prosper, but they mock the righteous. They laugh at the defeated. They ask, "Where is your God now?" They treat divine silence as divine absence. This compounds the injury. It's not enough that the people suffer physically, they suffer spiritually, watching their faith become a source of mockery rather than strength. Ezra concludes his opening salvo with a direct challenge. If we've sinned, fine. Punish us. But punish us yourself. Don't hand us over to people worse than we are. Don't let those who blaspheme your name become your instruments. The theology is aggressive. Ezra isn't asking for mercy. He's demanding justice according to the terms God himself established. This matters because it reveals what's at stake. This isn't about comfort or reassurance. This is about whether the moral structure of the universe makes sense, whether covenant faithfulness means anything, whether the distinctions between righteous and wicked, chosen and pagan, have any real significance. If God treats the faithful and faithless the same way, what's the point of faithfulness? If having the law doesn't protect you, why follow it? If being chosen means being crushed while the unchosen flourish, what does chosenness signify? These questions threatened to unravel Judaism after 70 CE. If they went unanswered, the entire tradition risked collapse. People wouldn't maintain a covenant that brought only suffering. They wouldn't follow a God who seemed either powerless or capricious. Ezra gives voice to this crisis. He refuses to pretend everything makes sense. He won't mouth pious phrases that ring hollow against the backdrop of burning Jerusalem. He demands an answer worthy of the question, and heaven, through Uriel, will respond. But the response won't be what Ezra expects. It won't provide the satisfaction of divine vindication within history. It will instead require a complete reframing of how to think about justice, time, and salvation. That transformation is the journey of the text. But first, Ezra has to ask the question, loudly, clearly, with all the pain and fury of a people betrayed. The first vision establishes the problem. Everything that follows will be an attempt to solve it, or at least to live with it in a way that preserves both sanity and faith. The angels answer. The limits of human understanding. Uriel appears. The angel's arrival shifts the dynamic immediately. Ezra's been shouting into the void. Now the void talks back. But Uriel doesn't start with answers. He starts with questions. Can you weigh fire, measure wind, call back a day that has passed? Ezra admits he can't. Of course he can't. These are impossible tasks, riddles designed to demonstrate the obvious. Human beings have limits. Then why, Uriel asks, do you think you can understand the ways of the Most High? This is the first move in heaven's defense. You're asking questions beyond your capacity to comprehend. You're demanding answers your mind can't hold. The very act of questioning assumes a perspective you don't possess. It's a classic move in wisdom literature. Job receives a similar response when he demands explanation from God. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? The Creator's knowledge infinitely exceeds the creature's. Accept your place. But Ezra doesn't accept this easily. He pushes back. Fine, maybe I can't understand everything. But surely I can understand enough to know whether you're being just... Surely the basics of fairness don't require infinite wisdom. Why can't you at least explain why the wicked prosper? Uriel shifts tactics. He tells Ezra that trying to understand this age is pointless because this age is corrupt. Evil entered the world through Adam. Sin spread through all his descendants. The whole system is broken. You're asking why a broken world doesn't function properly. The answer is because it's broken. This introduces a crucial concept that will dominate the rest of the text, the two ages. There's this age, the present world, corrupted by sin, ruled by evil impulses. And there's the age to come, a future world that will be incorrupt, righteous, redeemed. Justice doesn't operate within this age, it operates between the ages. God isn't ignoring the wicked, he's reserving judgment for the transition. When this age ends and the new one begins, that's when accounts will be settled. The wicked will be destroyed, the righteous will be vindicated, everything will finally make sense. But not now, not in history, only at history's end. Ezra finds this unsatisfying. He's asking about the present. Uriel keeps pointing to the future. The angel grows more specific. He describes signs that will precede the end. Earthquakes, social chaos, celestial disturbances. These are birth pangs. The old world dying so the new one can emerge. He emphasizes that the end is approaching. Not immediately, but soon. The majority of time has passed. More of history is behind than ahead. This is meant to be comforting. Your suffering has a time limit. Hold on. The age to come will make everything right. But Ezra isn't comforted. He wants to know about those who've already died. What about all the righteous people who suffered and died before this great transformation? Do they just miss out? Uriel assures him they don't. The new age will include resurrection. The dead will rise. They'll receive their due. No one who remained faithful will be forgotten. This moves the discussion from corporate to individual justice. It's not just about the nation's vindication. It's about every single righteous person receiving reward and every single wicked person receiving punishment. The framework is becoming clearer. God's justice operates on a cosmic timeline, not a historical one. You can't evaluate it by looking at current conditions. You have to wait for the final accounting. Ezra objects that this makes life meaningless. If nothing in the present matters except as prologue to the future, why struggle? Why suffer? Why maintain faithfulness? Uriel's response is stark. This age is a test, a trial. The righteous prove themselves through their endurance. They store up merit for the age to come. Their suffering isn't meaningless. It's the mechanism by which they earn eternal reward. The wicked, meanwhile, enjoy temporary pleasures. They prosper now precisely because they have no future. Their blessing is limited to this corrupt age. When it ends, so does their good fortune. This inverts Ezra's initial complaint. The wicked aren't getting away with anything. They're actually in the worst position because their prosperity is finite. The righteous suffer now, but inherit eternity. It's a radical revaluation. What looks like injustice from within history becomes justice from an eternal perspective. But it requires accepting that perspective. It requires believing the age to come will actually arrive. It requires trusting that temporary suffering outweighs permanent joy. Uriel hammers this home. You have to stop thinking like someone trapped in time. You have to adopt God's viewpoint, which transcends time. From that angle, everything makes perfect sense. Ezra remains troubled. The angel's logic is clear, but it feels like avoidance, like saying, "You'll understand when you're older," to a child asking legitimate questions. Uriel softens slightly. He acknowledges Ezra's love for the people. He commends the persistence, but he insists that wisdom requires accepting human limitations. The first exchange ends in a kind of stalemate. Uriel has provided a framework, the two ages, the coming judgment, the resurrection, but he hasn't resolved Ezra's core concern. He shifted the problem rather than solving it, and Ezra knows this. So he'll ask again, differently, deeper, pushing towards something more satisfying than wait and see. The debate has only begun. The second vision, the narrow path, and the few saved. Ezra returns to prayer. 7 days pass. He fasts, mourns, and prepares himself for another encounter. When Uriel appears again, Ezra shifts his argument. This time he's not asking about nations. He's asking about individuals. And his question is even more disturbing than before. Why, he asks, did you create so many people if most of them will be damned? This is the doctrine of the few, the idea that only a small remnant will be saved while the vast majority perish. It's implied in Uriel's previous answers about the age to come, and Ezra won't let it pass without challenge. Think about it, Ezra says. You created humanity knowing most would fail. You gave them free will, knowing they'd misuse it. You established a law they couldn't perfectly keep. Then you condemned them for failing at an impossible task. This seems worse than the first problem. At least with nations, you could argue about comparative righteousness, but with individuals, the sheer waste is appalling. All these souls created with such care, destined for destruction. Why not make fewer people and save more of them? Why not make salvation easier? Why create beings you know will fail? Uriel's response is one of the text's most famous passages, the parable of the narrow entrance. Imagine, he says, a city by the sea. To reach it, you must pass through a narrow entrance. On one side, fire. On the other, deep water. Only a single person can walk the path at a time. It's treacherous. Most who attempt it fail. Now suppose someone gave you this city as an inheritance. Would you complain about the narrow entrance? Or would you simply do what's necessary to reach your inheritance? The point is clear. Salvation is available. The path exists. The fact that it's difficult doesn't make it unfair. Everyone has the same opportunity. Those who fail do so by their own choices. But Ezra isn't satisfied. He points out that human beings are fundamentally flawed. Adam's sin infected all his descendants with an evil impulse, the Yetzer Hara in Jewish thought. People don't just choose evil because they're perverse. They choose evil because they're made with a tendency toward it. How is it fair to create beings with built-in failure and then punish them for failing? Uriel's answer becomes harsher. The Most High didn't want anyone to perish. The law was given as a guide. Wisdom was available. Those who perish do so willingly by their own choices. They can't blame their creator. He adds something chilling. The righteous few are actually more precious because they're rare. Like gems or gold, their value comes from scarcity. The many who perish highlight the worth of the few who endure. This is the opposite of Ezra's value system. Ezra thinks in terms of the community. The more saved, the better. Uriel is presenting a model where salvation is individual, competitive, and inherently limited. Ezra tries another angle. You love the creation more than the creator loves it. This is a bold claim. You're saying I care about human beings more than God does. You're saying my compassion exceeds divine compassion. If that's true, something is very wrong. Uriel doesn't deny the premise. Instead, he says, yes, you love the creation, but you're part of it. You can't see the larger picture. The creator's love operates differently because it operates from complete knowledge. Imagine a mother who must discipline her child. The child might think the mother cruel, but the mother knows the discipline serves the child's ultimate good. The creator's relationship to creation works similarly. Ezra asks when the judgment will come. When will the righteous receive their reward and the wicked their punishment? Uriel provides signs. The expected number of souls must be reached. Not every soul ever created will come to birth, but a specific quota must be filled. When that number is complete, the present age will end. He describes cosmic upheaval, normal order breaking down, women giving birth to monsters, salt water and fresh springs, friends attacking each other, reason fleeing. These signs serve a purpose. They tell the faithful that the end is near. They provide hope that suffering won't continue forever, but they also raise a disturbing implication. If the number of souls is fixed, and most will perish, then the world is running toward a predetermined outcome. How does that square with free will? Uriel doesn't address this directly. He simply reiterates that salvation is available to those who seek it. The righteous should focus on their own faithfulness rather than worrying about statistics. Ezra remains troubled. The mathematical reality bothers him. Even if salvation is theoretically available to everyone, practically most people fail. That makes the system itself suspect. The angel's final argument in this vision is pragmatic. You can't save those who don't want to be saved. Many people prefer this age to the next. They choose temporary pleasures over eternal rewards. They've been warned. They've been taught. If they persist in wickedness, their destruction is their own choice. This shifts responsibility from God to humanity. The system isn't rigged. People rig themselves by their choices. But it leaves Ezra and attentive readers with a lingering unease. If most people fail, doesn't that suggest something wrong with either the test or the test takers? If humans are created with strong impulses toward evil and weak capacity for good, who's really responsible for the outcome? The second vision exposes these tensions without resolving them. It forces readers to grapple with predestination versus free will, divine sovereignty versus human responsibility, justice versus mercy. Uriel has provided answers, but they're answers that generate new questions. Ezra isn't done yet, neither is the text. The debate will continue, but it will begin to shift. From argument toward vision, from philosophy toward symbol, from trying to understand God's ways toward accepting transformation. The third vision, the signs of the end times, 7 more days, another fast, another prayer. Ezra's tone changes slightly in this vision. He's still persistent, still troubled, but there's a subtle shift from challenge toward inquiry. He's not so much arguing now as seeking specific information. He wants to know when. When will this age end? When will the new age begin? What are the signs? How will people know the time has come? Uriel responds with the most detailed apocalyptic timetable in 4 Ezra. But first, he reframes the question. Don't ask when the end comes for the whole world. Ask when your age ends, when your individual judgment arrives. Because for each person, the end times begin at death. This individualizes eschatology. Yes, there will be a cosmic end, but your personal encounter with divine justice comes when you die. The world might continue, but your age terminates at death's door. Still, Ezra wants to know about the corporate end, the final transformation, the moment when this corrupt age gives way to the incorrupt one. Uriel obliges. He describes a sequence of signs. They come in stages, each more intense than the last. The world will groan like a woman in labor. Creation itself will shudder as it prepares to give birth to something new. First comes social disruptions. Children will be born with gray hair, old before their time. Pregnant women will miscarry at 4 months. Physical laws will break down. What was fertile becomes barren. What was stable becomes chaotic. Then astronomical phenomena. The sun will shine at night, the moon during the day, blood will drip from wood, the stone will give voice. The people will be terrified because nothing makes sense anymore. After that, political upheaval. Suddenly, a king whom no one expected will rise. Birds will migrate away. The Sodomitic Sea, the Dead Sea, will cast up fish. A voice will cry out at night, and everyone will hear it. The earth itself will open up. Fire will break forth. Wild animals will abandon their territories. Women will give birth to monsters. Fresh water will become salty. Friends will suddenly attack each other. Reason will hide. Wisdom will withdraw to her chambers. Many will seek understanding but not find it. Unrighteousness will increase. Truth will grow more distant. These signs aren't random. They represent the complete breakdown of normal order. Nature, society, cosmos, reason, everything that makes life stable and predictable collapses. Why? Because the present age is passing. The old world must die before the new one can be born. The contractions must become unbearable before the delivery. Uriel emphasizes that whoever survives these tribulations will see salvation. Anyone who endures to the end will witness the great transformation. They'll see the Messiah revealed. They'll experience the resurrection. They'll enter the age to come. Then he provides timing. The Messiah will be revealed. Fate, he'll reign with the survivors for 400 years. After that, the Messiah himself will die along with all living humanity. The world will return to primeval silence for 7 days, echoing the 7 days before creation in Genesis. After this cosmic Sabbath, the resurrection occurs. The earth gives up its dead. The chambers of souls release those they've been holding. Everyone who ever lived appears for judgment. The Most High sits on the judgment seat. Books are opened. Everyone's deeds are revealed. Nothing is hidden. No excuses are accepted. Then comes separation. The righteous, those who proved faithful, enter paradise. They experience 7 forms of joy, each more glorious than the last. They see the face of the one they served in life. They receive crowns and glory. The wicked experience 7 forms of torment. They see the glory they could have had but forfeited. They recognize the suffering they caused. They face the one they rejected. They descend to punishment with no possibility of escape. This is the final accounting Uriel has been promising. Justice delayed, but ultimately delivered. Every wrong righted. Every faithfulness rewarded. The cosmic books balanced. Ezra asks about intercession. Can the righteous pray for the wicked? Can the faithful help those who failed? Uriel's answer is firm. No. On the day of judgment, no one intercedes for anyone. Each person stands alone before divine justice. The righteous can't help the wicked. The wicked can't burden the righteous. Individual responsibility is absolute. This is both comforting and terrifying. Comforting because it means your faithfulness can't be canceled by others' failures. Terrifying because it means you can't rely on anyone else's merit. The emphasis on individual judgment reflects the transformation happening in post-70 CE Judaism. Without the temple, without national sacrifice, without corporate atonement, each person must forge their own relationship with God. Ezra asks whether there's a specific event that triggers everything. Uriel indicates there's a fullness of time. When the quota of souls is complete, when the signs have been fulfilled, when the cosmic moment arrives, then the end comes, not before, not after, at the exact appointed time. This should provide comfort to the suffering. Your pain has a deadline. The injustice won't continue forever. Hold on, endure. The transformation is coming, but it also creates urgency. If the end is near, and Uriel suggests it is, then there's little time to prepare. The window for repentance narrows. The opportunity for changing course shrinks. The third vision thus serves multiple purposes. It provides specific content for hope, details about what to expect and when. It maintains the framework of the 2 ages while filling in the transition. It individualizes salvation while preserving corporate elements. And it shifts Ezra's questioning. He's no longer arguing about whether God is just. He's accepting the framework Uriel provides and seeking to understand it better. This represents progress, not complete resolution, but movement. Ezra is being transformed by the dialogue. His initial defiance is softening into something more like preparation. The visions that follow will complete this transformation. But the third vision marks a turning point. From here, the emphasis shifts from debate to revelation, from challenge to understanding. The prophet is learning, the angel is succeeding, the text is moving toward its resolution. The fourth vision, the mourning woman and the consolation of Zion. Something changes in the fourth vision. Everything before has been dialogue, argument, question and answer. Ezra challenges, Uriel responds. They debate the terms of divine justice. Now suddenly, symbol. Ezra is preparing for another encounter with Uriel when he sees a woman. She's sitting in a field, mourning. Her clothes are torn. Ashes cover her head. She's wailing with a grief so profound it stops him in his tracks. He approaches and asks why she weeps. Her story pours out. She was barren for 30 years. Every day she prayed for a child. Every night she begged God to grant her request. Finally, after 3 decades of waiting, God heard her. She became pregnant. She gave birth to a son. Joy flooded her life. She raised him with such care. Her husband was overjoyed. They celebrated. They planned. When the boy came of age, they arranged his marriage. On his wedding day, surrounded by friends and family, her son entered his wedding chamber and died. Just like that, one moment alive, the next moment gone. No warning, no explanation. The wedding became a funeral. Her joy became ashes. Now she sits in this field, refusing comfort. She plans to stay here until she dies. She'll never return to the city. She'll never go home. Her grief is total, consuming, final. Ezra listens to all this, and instead of offering sympathy, he rebukes her. He tells her she's being selfish. Yes, you lost one son, but Zion has lost thousands. Jerusalem has lost her children. The mother of us all mourns in the ruins. Your personal tragedy is nothing compared to that corporate destruction. Stop thinking about your own pain, he says. Think about the greater suffering. Your grief is individual. Ours is national. You lost one. We lost everything. Go back to the city. Accept your suffering. Join the community in its mourning. Don't isolate yourself in private anguish when the whole people are in agony. It's a harsh response, but it reflects where Ezra has been throughout the text. He's been arguing on behalf of the community, defending the nation, questioning why the collective has suffered. Now he's telling this woman to adopt that same perspective. The woman refuses. Her loss is everything to her. She won't minimize it. She won't return. Ezra insists, presses harder, argues more forcefully. You must accept divine justice. You must acknowledge that greater griefs exist. You must, and then she transforms. Suddenly, without warning, the woman's face begins to shine. Her form shifts. She grows, expands, blazes with light. Where she sat, a city appears. Buildings rise from the ground. Foundations emerge. Walls, towers, streets. A complete city materializing where there was only a mourning woman in a field. Ezra cries out in terror. He faints. Uriel arrives and lifts him up. Why are you lying on the ground? The angel asks. Why is your soul troubled? Ezra explains what he saw. The woman, the transformation, the city. Uriel tells him to interpret it. What did the vision mean? Ezra can't. He's too shaken. He begs Uriel to explain. The angel's interpretation is the heart of the vision. The woman you saw is Zion, the city of Jerusalem. She appeared to you as a woman because that's how the prophets always described her, as daughter Zion, the mother of the people. Her 30 years of barrenness represent the 3,000 years. Uriel uses symbolic numbers, from creation to the building of Solomon's temple. During that time, no permanent dwelling place for God existed on earth. Her prayers represent the prayers of the people. Her conception represents the temple's construction. Her son represents the temple itself, the place where God met his people. The son's death on his wedding day represents the temple's destruction. The moment of greatest joy, when the wedding should have occurred, became the moment of greatest tragedy. And the woman's grief represents Zion's grief, Jerusalem mourning her destroyed sanctuary, the people wailing over their lost center. But, Uriel continues, the transformation you witnessed represents divine consolation. The woman becoming a city represents Zion being rebuilt, not the earthly city, limited and vulnerable. The heavenly Zion, the pre-existent city, the eternal dwelling place of God. This is crucial. Uriel is saying there are two Jerusalems, the earthly one, which has been destroyed, and the heavenly one, which always existed and always will exist. The earthly was only ever a shadow of the heavenly. When the earthly temple fell, it seemed like everything was lost. But the heavenly reality remains, and in the age to come, that heavenly Jerusalem will be revealed. It will descend. It will become the center of the new creation. So the woman's transformation represents hope, the movement from earthly grief to heavenly consolation, from temporary loss to eternal restoration. Ezra asks why she appeared in a field rather than in the city. Uriel explains that no structure built by human hands can contain the vision of God's dwelling place. Only in the open, in a place not shaped by human effort, can such glory be revealed. The vision marks a turning point in Ezra's journey. Notice what happens. Throughout the earlier visions, Ezra has been demanding answers for the community's suffering. He's been the voice of national grief, refusing to accept easy consolations. Now he meets a woman doing the same thing, refusing consolation, insisting on the totality of her grief, and he rebukes her. He tells her to look beyond her individual pain to the larger context. In doing so, he's actually arguing against his own earlier position. He's saying what Uriel has been telling him. Your immediate suffering isn't the whole story. There's a larger framework. Accept it. Move forward. The woman's transformation then shows him what acceptance looks like. She doesn't deny her grief. The son is still dead. But through divine action, not human effort, her grief becomes the foundation for something glorious. Similarly, Jerusalem's destruction is real. The temple is gone. But through divine action, a greater Jerusalem will emerge. The heavenly city will be revealed. What was lost temporarily will be restored eternally. This vision does something the arguments couldn't. It provides an emotional resolution, not just an intellectual one. Ezra doesn't just understand the theology of the two ages. He experiences it symbolically through the woman's transformation. From here, everything shifts. The remaining visions won't be arguments, they'll be revelations. Ezra won't question, he'll witness, learn, and ultimately be transformed himself. The mourning is over, the consolation begins. The fifth vision, the eagle and the lion, Rome's fall foretold. Now the visions become grand, cosmic, politically dangerous. Ezra dreams of an eagle rising from the sea. But this isn't a normal eagle. It has 12 feathered wings and 3 heads. As it spreads its wings, wind blows across the earth. Clouds gather. The eagle reigns over everything. Then Ezra notices smaller wings, 8 of them, growing opposite the 12 large ones. These are so small they're barely visible. The heads remain in the middle, dominant but dormant for now. The eagle's wings begin taking turns ruling over the earth. Each wing rises to power, reigns for a time, then disappears. Some vanish without anyone even remembering they existed. Others rule longer and are more prominent. But eventually, all the 12 wings pass away. Then the 8 small wings take their turns. Their reigns are brief, tumultuous. They barely establish themselves before they too disappear. After all the wings have ruled, the 3 heads awaken. The middle head, largest of the 3, establishes dominion. The 2 smaller heads join it. Together they devour the earth. They oppress everyone. Their tyranny exceeds all previous rulers. But then the heads turn on each other. The 2 smaller heads conspire against the middle one. They ally, attack, and devour it. With the middle head gone, the 2 remaining heads seize absolute power. They're worse than everything before. Their oppression is total, their cruelty unprecedented. They seem invincible. Suddenly a lion appears, a roaring lion emerging from a forest. It speaks with a human voice, a voice Ezra recognizes as the voice of the Most High. The lion confronts the eagle, denounces it, accuses it of tyranny, oppression, and injustice. It recounts the eagle's crimes against the Most High's people. Every form of wickedness the eagle committed, the lion catalogs. Then the lion pronounces judgment. Your time is finished. Your reign is over. You will vanish from the earth so that the world can be refreshed, can rest from your violence, and can hope for the justice and mercy of its creator. As the lion speaks, the eagle burns. Its body is consumed. Only ashes remain. Ezra wakes, terrified. His mind reels, his body trembles. What did this vision mean? It felt significant, dangerous, like knowing a secret that could get you executed. He prays for interpretation. He begs to understand what he's seen. Uriel appears and explains. The eagle is the 4th kingdom from Daniel's vision, the final empire, the one that will be more terrible than all that came before it. This is Rome. The 12 wings are 12 emperors. The 8 small wings are minor rulers, usurpers, brief powers that emerge during times of transition. The three heads are the final dynasty, the ultimate concentration of Roman power. Each wing and head represents a specific ruler or period. Uriel doesn't name them explicitly. That would be too dangerous for anyone reading the text under Roman rule, but the structure is clear. The vision traces Rome's history from its rise to its prophesied fall. The lion is the Messiah, the anointed one whom the Most High has kept in reserve for the end times. He will emerge, confront Rome, denounce its crimes, and destroy it not through military might, but through divine judgment. The lion's voice is God's voice. The words are divine verdict. When the Messiah speaks, he speaks with heaven's authority. His speech itself is the weapon that destroys the empire. After Rome falls, the Messiah will establish a reign of justice. He'll gather the remnant of Israel, those who survive the eagle's oppression, and give them joy until the final judgment arrives. This vision is revolutionary, literally. It predicts Rome's downfall. It promises that the empire that destroyed Jerusalem, that crucified thousands, that oppressed the Jewish people, will itself be destroyed. The tables will turn. The powerful will be brought low. The oppressed will be vindicated. For a community living under Roman occupation, this is explosive material. If authorities discovered someone reading or teaching this vision, the consequences could be severe. Rome didn't tolerate prophecies of its own destruction. But the vision offers more than political hope. It provides theological assurance that Rome's power is temporary. The eagle seems dominant now, but it's living on borrowed time. Its reign has a deadline. The Messiah is waiting. This matters because it reframes the question Ezra asked at the beginning. Why does the wicked nation prosper? Because its time hasn't come yet. Its judgment is reserved for the end. But when that end arrives, it will be absolute and final. The vision also shows how apocalyptic literature functions politically. By couching contemporary history in symbolic animals and prophetic imagery, the text can say things that would be impossible to say directly. Everyone in the community knows the eagle is Rome. But if questioned by authorities, the text is just a strange dream about animals. The lion as Messiah is significant too. This is a warrior figure, a judge, someone who confronts power directly and destroys it through divine authority. This isn't the suffering servant. This is the conquering king. Later Christian readers will interpret this Messiah as Jesus, particularly his second coming. They'll see the denouncement of Rome as judgment on the empire that crucified Christ. But in its original Jewish context, this is pure political hope. God will overthrow the oppressor. Justice will come through divine action. Ezra is overwhelmed by the vision. It's too big, too dangerous, too wonderful. He needs days to process it. But he's also being prepared. Each vision builds on the previous one. The theological framework, 2 ages, coming judgment, messianic intervention, is being filled in with specific content. Abstract principles become concrete images. The woman transformed into a city showed divine consolation. The eagle destroyed by the lion shows divine justice. Both are necessary. Comfort without justice is hollow. Justice without comfort is cold. Together, these visions paint a picture of total reversal. Everything wrong will be set right. Everyone who suffered faithfully will be vindicated. The empire will fall. The temple will be restored. The age of oppression will end. Not yet, but soon. Hold on. Endure. The lion is coming. The 6th vision. The man from the sea, the warrior Messiah. The sea boils, not with heat, with something else, something rising from depths no human can fathom. Ezra watches as the waters churn, and then there he is, a man. Flying on the clouds like wind itself carries him. His face turns, and mountains crumble. His voice speaks, and armies dissolve. This is the 6th vision, the most violent, the most puzzling, and maybe the most important. The man comes from the sea, but he's not emerging. He's being revealed, like he was always there, hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to break through. Wind and flame surround him, not touching him, not burning him, just there, present, terrifying. Ezra sees nations gather, countless peoples. They come from every direction, converging like storm systems racing toward a single point. They come with weapons, with rage, with the confidence of overwhelming numbers. They come to destroy him. The man doesn't move. He doesn't raise a hand. From his mouth comes a stream, not of water, not of fire exactly. Something between. A flood of flame. A burning river that sweeps across the assembled multitudes and consumes them, utterly, completely. There's no battle. No clash of armies. No strategy or tactics, just annihilation. And then the scene shifts. The man stands on a mountain, not one Ezra recognizes, not one that exists in the physical world. It's carved, somehow, cut from a single piece of stone without human hands. This mountain simply is, appearing as if reality itself carved out space for it. Surrounding the man now is a different crowd, peaceful, unarmed. They're not warriors, they're refugees, survivors. The remnant that remained faithful while empires raged and armies marched. He gathers them, welcomes them, protects them. Two scenes, one figure, warrior and shepherd, destroyer and savior. Uriel explains, though by now Ezra hardly needs the interpretation. This man represents the anointed one, the Messiah kept hidden by the Most High until the final days. He's been preserved, waiting in concealment like a weapon in a sheath for the moment when evil reaches its fullness. The peoples who gather against him are the nations who've oppressed the chosen community. Every empire that conquered, every army that destroyed, every power that mocked the covenant and scattered the faithful across the earth. They unite one final time, driven by a last desperate fury to eliminate what they cannot control. Their destruction is total. But notice, it's not really a battle. The Messiah doesn't fight. He speaks. He exhales. Reality bends to his word. This isn't military conquest, it's cosmic authority. The difference between a general defeating an army and a judge pronouncing sentence. The mountain matters. Mountains in apocalyptic literature mark divine presence, places where heaven touches earth. But this mountain, carved without hands, echoes something else. The prophet Daniel saw a stone cut without hands that struck an image representing world empires and grew into a mountain filling the earth. Here, the mountain is already present, already established. The Messiah stands on ground prepared before time began, announcing a kingdom that existed before any earthly power drew breath. The peaceful multitude represents something crucial. After judgment comes gathering. After destruction comes restoration. The Messiah's role splits. He eliminates opposition to divine order, then shelters those who remained true during the age of testing. This figure carries weapons but uses words, commands armies but leads refugees, destroys enemies but embraces the faithful. Scholars debate his identity endlessly. Is this the same Messiah from the eagle vision, the lion who roared at Rome? The text never explicitly confirms, but the functions align. Both judge empires. Both vindicate the oppressed. Both usher in the new age. But this vision adds dimensions the earlier ones didn't emphasize. Here, the Messiah is pre-existent, hidden with God before creation, revealed at history's climax. This moves beyond a human king from David's line. This is something cosmic, something between human and divine, a figure kept in reserve for the final act. The stream of fire from his mouth recalls divine attributes. Only God speaks and reality obeys. Only God's word accomplishes what it declares. Yet, the text maintains careful boundaries. This figure is the anointed one, sent by the Most High, not the Most High himself. The vision captures Jewish messianic hope at its most expansive, a redeemer who doesn't negotiate with oppressors or gradually build influence through political maneuvering. He simply appears, pronounces judgment, and establishes divine order. The kingdoms of this age receive no second chances, no diplomatic solutions, no peaceful transitions of power. They end. Compare this to the emerging Christian movement's portrait of their Messiah. By the time Fort Ezra circulates, Christians are telling stories of a peaceful teacher executed by Rome, raised from death, and expected to return in glory. Future violence, yes, but their Messiah already appeared once as suffering servant. Here, there's no first coming, no preparation, no ministry of teaching and healing before the final judgment. The man from the sea arrives once at the end, and everything changes immediately. One appearance, one declaration, one cosmic reset. The remnant gathered around the mountain represents those who endured. They didn't conquer. They didn't overthrow oppressors. They survived. They maintained faithfulness despite everything, suggesting they'd backed the losing side. Their vindication comes not through their own strength, but through divine intervention on their behalf. This vision offers comfort wrapped in terror. Comfort because the faithful will be saved. Terror because that salvation requires the obliteration of everyone else. There's no middle ground, no neutral parties. The nations either oppress or get caught in the crossfire of those who do. The cosmic scale matters. This isn't one nation defeating another. It's the end of the entire system. Every empire, every power structure, every human authority that elevated itself against divine order. The sweeps. Here's the crucial piece. This Messiah doesn't establish his kingdom through human means. He doesn't organize resistance movements or build alliances. He's hidden, completely removed from human history until the appointed moment. Then he appears, and human history ends. For a community watching Rome parade captured temple vessels through their streets, this vision provides exactly what they need. Not a strategy for gradual improvement, not hope for better political leaders, but the promise that the entire corrupt system faces imminent destruction by forces beyond human resistance. The mountain carved without hands becomes the eternal foundation. While empires rise and fall, this mountain simply exists, prepared, permanent, unshakable. The Messiah doesn't build it. He stands on it. He reveals what was always there, hidden from human eyes until the moment of unveiling. Ezra receives this vision without the protest that marked earlier revelations. He's moved past arguing, past demanding explanations for present suffering. He's accepted the framework. This age is corrupt beyond repair. Salvation comes only through its complete replacement. The man from the sea embodies that replacement. He's the living division between ages. Before him stands the old order, violent, oppressive, doomed. Behind him gathers the new, peaceful, protected, eternal. He doesn't bridge the two ages. He ends one and begins the other. The stream of fire accomplishes in moments what human resistance could never achieve across centuries. This is apocalyptic hope at its purest, the conviction that divine intervention will accomplish what human effort cannot. The vision closes with the peaceful assembly. After the terror, tranquility. After judgment, joy. After the warrior comes the shepherd. Two roles, one figure, complete reversal of the present age, where shepherds become warriors just to survive. The seventh revelation, restoring the law, 70 books in 40 days, 40 days. That's what Ezra gets. 40 days to accomplish what should take lifetimes. The vision's end. Now comes instruction. Direct, immediate, urgent. God speaks to Ezra without angelic intermediary. The message is clear. The law has been consumed. When Jerusalem burned, when the temple fell, when priests scattered and scrolls turned to ash, the Torah itself was lost. Not just copies. The knowledge, the tradition, the words that bound heaven to earth. Israel sits in darkness without the light that guided them. Ezra must restore it, all of it. The command is impossible. Ezra is one man. He didn't memorize every letter of every scroll. He can't reconstruct from memory what took generations to write. But the command stands. Restore the law. Rewrite what was lost. Make known what was hidden. Ezra gathers 5 men, scribes, fast writers who can keep pace with inspired speech. He prepares himself. Drinks a cup offered by an angel, filled with liquid like water but colored like fire. It tastes like nothing on earth. And then he speaks. For 40 days, words pour from him without pause. Not from memory, not from reconstruction, from somewhere else. A source beyond himself. The words come and he speaks them, and the scribes write furiously, recording everything. Day becomes night, becomes day. The scribes rotate through exhaustion. Ezra continues. Unstoppable, 40 days without rest. 94 books emerge. 94. 24 are designated for public consumption. These are the books Israel knows, the Torah, the prophets, the writings, the Hebrew scriptures that defined covenant relations. These are restored first, given to everyone, read openly. But 70 books are reserved. These are kept back, hidden, revealed only to the wise, only to those whose understanding has been prepared. These books contain the deeper mysteries, the secrets of creation, the timeline of ages, the mechanics of divine judgment, knowledge too powerful for general distribution. The number matters. 70 represents completeness, fullness. In Jewish tradition, 70 nations fill the earth. 70 elders received the Spirit alongside Moses. 70 members formed the Sanhedrin. The number signals universal scope, knowledge that encompasses all reality, but it's restricted. Not everyone receives the 70 books. Not everyone can handle them. This moment reshapes Ezra's identity. He entered the narrative as a questioner, angry, confused, demanding answers from God about justice and mercy. He ends as a prophet, a mediator, the channel through which divine knowledge flows back into a broken world. The visions transformed him. Each revelation pushed him further from human perspective toward divine viewpoint. The morning woman revealed the shift from demanding explanations to accepting mystery, from insisting on justice now to trusting future restoration. This final section completes the arc. Ezra becomes what Moses was, not just a lawgiver, but a law restorer, not just a leader, but a link between heaven and earth. The 40 days echo Moses on Sinai, 40 days receiving the law, 40 years wandering in wilderness, 40, the number of testing, preparation, transition between what was and what will be. But Ezra does something Moses never did. He writes down the mysteries. Moses received esoteric teaching, but transmitted it orally, creating chains of tradition from master to student. Ezra commits the secrets to writing, creating a library of apocalyptic knowledge. This explains the text's own existence. Fourth Ezra itself is one of the 70 hidden books. It contains precisely the kind of material the passage describes: visions of coming judgment, cosmic timelines, messianic revelations, knowledge reserved for those whose suffering prepared them to receive it. The separation of public and hidden texts addresses a real tension in post-70 CE Judaism. The covenant appeared broken, the temple lay in ruins, the law seemed powerless to protect Israel. Simple faith struggled against overwhelming evidence that God had abandoned the chosen people. The 70 books offer deeper explanation. They don't contradict the 24 public texts, they expand them, reveal layers beneath the surface, show how present suffering fits into larger patterns invisible to ordinary understanding. The wise who receive these books aren't intellectually superior. They're experientially prepared. They've suffered, they've questioned, they've wrestled with theodicy, they've earned the right to deeper truth through the cost of maintaining faith when everything argued against it. Ezra's transformation from questioner to prophet mirrors the journey every reader must take. Start with honest questions. Don't suppress the anger or confusion, but move through it. Let the questions reshape you. Let the visions expand your perspective. Accept that this age operates under rules that will be overturned. Then, and only then, receive the deeper mysteries. The text never reveals what's in the 70 books. Specific content remains hidden, but the categories are clear: apocalyptic timelines, cosmic mechanics, angelology, demonology, the structure of heavens and hells, the sequence of judgment. Everything necessary to understand how present suffering leads to future glory. After 40 days, Ezra is taken up, like Enoch before him, like Moses on Nebo, like Elijah in the chariot. He doesn't die a normal death. He's translated, removed from earthly existence and brought into heavenly places. The text doesn't describe the mechanics. He completes his task of restoration, and then he's gone. This final detail elevates Ezra beyond mere prophet. He joins the company of those who transcended death, who moved from earthly life to heavenly existence without passing through the grave. Figures who become bridges between realms, whose intercession remains potent because they never fully left this world. They just relocated to a better vantage point. The parallels to Moses are deliberate and extensive. Moses brought the law down from Sinai. Ezra brings it back from destruction. Moses died with his mission complete. Ezra is taken up with his mission complete. Moses was buried in an unknown location. Ezra simply vanishes. But there's a crucial difference. Moses led a people out of slavery into freedom, from Egypt through wilderness toward the promised land. Ezra leads a people through intellectual and spiritual crisis, from despair through questioning toward apocalyptic hope. Moses' journey was physical. Ezra's is conceptual. The restoration of the law serves multiple functions. Practically, it gives the community a foundation. The public books provide ethical guidance, worship structure, communal identity. These are the basics needed to maintain existence as a people. The hidden books provide meaning. They explain why the basics weren't enough, why following the law didn't prevent disaster, why covenant faithfulness didn't ensure divine protection, why the righteous suffered while the wicked prospered. Without the 70, the 24 become unbearable, just a list of broken promises and failed expectations. With the 70, the 24 become the surface of something deeper, the visible portion of mysteries that extend far beyond normal human perception. This division reflects how apocalyptic communities always function: public face and hidden depth, exoteric teaching for everyone, and esoteric knowledge for initiates. The line between them isn't arbitrary, it's developmental. You receive what you're ready to handle. Ezra's 40 days of inspired speech demonstrate divine involvement in the restoration. This isn't human scholarship reconstructing lost texts. This is revelation, God speaking through a prepared vessel. The words carry authority because their source isn't memory or intelligence, but direct divine transmission. The five scribes witnessing and recording the revelation serve as verification. They confirm what happened. They authenticate the text. They ensure the community knows these aren't Ezra's inventions, but genuine restoration of what was lost. After they finish writing, after Ezra is taken up, the scribes become the guardians. They're responsible for distributing the 24 public books and protecting the 70 hidden ones. They determine who qualifies as wise enough to receive the mysteries. This creates a structure of authority within the community. Not based on priestly lineage, the temple is gone. Not based on political power, they have none. Based on spiritual maturity, on depth of suffering and faithfulness, on willingness to wrestle with hard questions and accept even harder answers. The seventh revelation transforms for Ezra from complaint to commission. Ezra begins demanding God justify divine governance. He ends empowered to restore what was lost and reveal what was hidden. His questions weren't rejected, they were preparation for a larger role. The text ends not with answers to his original questions, but with Ezra transcending the need for those answers. He moves beyond argument into acceptance, beyond human perspective into prophetic vision, beyond this age into the next. The 94 books stand as his legacy. 24 for survival, 70 for understanding, both necessary, neither sufficient alone. Theology in crisis, questioning covenant, law, and election. Every promise seemed broken, the temple destroyed, the covenant shattered, the law powerless to protect those who followed it faithfully. The chosen people, scattered, oppressed, conquered by nations that worshipped false gods and mocked the Most High. If you're Israel in the year 70 CE, everything you believed about God's relationship with your people appears to be a lie. Fourth, Ezra doesn't shy away from this. It dives straight into the theological crater left by the temple's destruction. And what it finds there is terrifying. Maybe the old answers don't work anymore. The covenant was supposed to be eternal. God promised Abraham his descendants would become a great nation. Moses received law that would set Israel apart, make them holy, ensure divine protection. David received assurance his line would rule forever. All of that is smoking rubble now. Ezra's opening complaint targets the core issue, election. Why choose Israel at all if you're going to let Babylon, now Rome, destroy them? The choosers of God defeated by those who reject God. The covenant community crushed by covenant breakers. This flips the entire biblical narrative. From Abraham forward, the story built toward Israel's flourishing under divine favor. Occasional punishment for disobedience, yes. Exile when the people strayed too far, but always restoration, always return, always renewal of covenant promises. Until now. 70 CE feels different. This isn't discipline. This is annihilation, not correction, but termination. The temple's destruction removes the mechanism for atonement. No temple means no sacrifices. No sacrifices means no way to restore relationship when the people sin. The covenant machinery has been dismantled. Ezra asks the question every Jew must be asking, why? If we're your people, why permit this? If the covenant is real, why doesn't it protect us? If the law is divine, why doesn't following it ensure blessing? Uriel's answers cut deep, deeper than Ezra wants to hear. The problem isn't God's faithfulness. The problem is the entire structure of this present age. It's corrupted from its foundation, the human heart inclined toward evil from youth. The evil seed planted in Adam grows in every generation. Following the law helps, but it can't eliminate the fundamental tendency towards sin. This is radical theology. It suggests the covenant can't accomplish what it promised because human nature makes it impossible. Give people perfect law and they'll still violate it. Offer them divine favor and they'll still chase after other powers. Plant them in promised land and they'll still corrupt it with injustice. The law was never sufficient for salvation. It was a temporary measure, a way to organize communal life and maintain minimal relationship with God until something more fundamental could be addressed. That something is the age itself. Fourth, Ezra develops a stark dualism, this age versus the age to come. The present creation belongs to corruption. The coming creation will be incorruptible. The current system operates under principles that make genuine righteousness nearly impossible. The future system will reverse those principles entirely. This raises an uncomfortable question. What was the point of the covenant at all? If this age is irredeemable, why bother with law? Why give commandments that can't save? Why establish elaborate systems of sacrifice and priesthood if they're ultimately powerless against the corruption built into reality itself? The text wrestles with this without fully resolving it. The covenant wasn't meaningless. It identified God's people. It maintained connection across generations. It preserved the idea that divine relationship was possible even when that relationship couldn't accomplish ultimate redemption. But 4th Ezra forces a devastating conclusion. The covenant by itself in this age cannot save the majority of humanity. Ezra's second vision hits this hardest. Few will be saved. Most will perish. The entrance to the age to come is narrow, difficult. Very few find it. This conflicts sharply with covenant logic. The covenant promised that if Israel kept the law, they'd be blessed, multiply and prosper, fill the land, defeat enemies, live in peace. But keeping the law doesn't ensure salvation now. Most who try will fail. The evil inclination is too strong. The present age is too corrupt. Human nature is too compromised. Election itself comes under scrutiny. God chose Israel, but for what? To watch them struggle and mostly fail? To show that even chosen people can't overcome the corruption of this age? The chosen status feels more like burden than blessing. Uriel's response frames election differently. Israel was chosen to receive the law, to be tested more severely, to demonstrate that this age cannot be redeemed through human effort, even human effort empowered by divine law. The chosen people become the test case. If Israel with the law can't achieve righteousness, then clearly the system itself is broken. The age itself must be replaced. This is cold comfort. You're chosen to prove a negative, chosen to fail so God can justify destroying everything and starting over. But it explains present suffering. The temple's destruction isn't abandonment, it's demonstration. Proof that this age has run its course. Evidence that even the most sacred institutions operating under divine law cannot withstand the corruption inherent in present reality. The theological crisis extends to the law's purpose. Traditionally, Jews understood Torah as God's gift, instruction for living rightly, maintaining relationship, ensuring communal flourishing. Follow Torah and you align yourself with divine order. 4th Ezra questions this. The law is good, holy, divine, but ineffective at accomplishing salvation because human nature prevents full obedience and the present age undercuts even partial success. This doesn't make the law bad, it makes it insufficient. The distinction matters. Bad law should be discarded. Insufficient law should be transcended. The text never suggests abandoning Torah. It suggests recognizing Torah's limitations within the corrupt age while anticipating a future where those limitations no longer apply. The crisis of election, covenant, and law creates theological space for radical reimagining. If the old certainties don't hold, what replaces them? 4th Ezra's answer, apocalyptic hope, the conviction that God will act decisively to end this age and inaugurate the next. Divine intervention, not gradual improvement. Cosmic replacement, not systemic reform. The covenant isn't voided, it's fulfilled in unexpected ways. Election continues, but its meaning shifts. You're chosen for the coming age, not necessarily for flourishing in this one. The law remains binding, but its function changes. It identifies those who maintain faithfulness despite its inability to save them in this age. This theology transforms suffering. The temple's destruction isn't covenant failure, it's covenant fulfillment, in the sense that it demonstrates why the old system must end. Present oppression isn't divine abandonment, it's birth pangs. The final intensification of corruption before complete renewal. But the text never fully escapes the tension. If most people will perish, if even the chosen people struggle to achieve salvation, if the law can't rescue those who follow it, then what kind of God orchestrates this system? Ezra's complaints never fully receive satisfying answers. Uriel explains the mechanics, evil heart, corrupt age, divine sovereignty, but explanations aren't justifications. Understanding why most people fail doesn't make their failure less tragic. The theological crisis of 4th Ezra is ultimately the theological crisis of every catastrophic generation. When promises appear broken and systems fail, do you abandon faith or reimagine it? Do you conclude God is absent or that God operates according to principles you hadn't previously grasped? The text chooses reimagination, not comfortable reimagination, not easy answers, but a framework that accommodates present horror within larger purpose. The covenant stands, but its fulfillment requires destroying this age entirely. Election continues, but it identifies those preserved for the coming age, not those guaranteed success in this one. The law remains, but as marker, not savior, as identifier, not deliverer. This theology doesn't comfort easily. It demands accepting that this age is lost, that most people within it are lost, that even divine covenant and holy law cannot overcome the fundamental corruption of present reality. But it offers one thing the old theology couldn't: explanation for why the righteous suffer while the wicked prosper. Not because the covenant failed, because the covenant operates within an age that's ending. Its full power manifests only when this age is replaced. Fourth, Ezra transforms theological crisis into theological transition. The questions it raises don't get answered so much as reframed. And in that reframing, a traumatized community finds language for their horror and hope for eventual vindication. The old promises aren't lies, they're deferred, not broken, but awaiting fulfillment under conditions that haven't arrived yet. Soon, though. Very soon. This age is ending, the next is coming. And when it does, every question Ezra asked will be resolved. Apocalyptic cosmology, this age versus the age to come. Time splits in two, not gradually, not through evolution or improvement, through rupture, through violent transformation, through the complete destruction of one reality and the sudden emergence of another. Fourth, Ezra builds its entire worldview on this division, this age and the age to come. Two distinct orders of existence, two opposing systems, two incompatible ways of being, and absolutely no bridge between them. The present age is corrupted at its foundation, not corrupted like something good that went bad, corrupted in its essential structure. From the moment Adam ate the fruit, an evil heart entered humanity. That heart gets transmitted generationally. Every person born inherits it. Every human struggles against it. None escape it. This isn't about individual moral choices. It's about the system. The age itself operates under principles that ensure corruption spreads, sin multiplies, and righteousness remains agonizingly difficult. The age to come is different in nature, not just degree. It's not this age improved, not this age reformed or repaired or gradually healed. It's built on entirely different foundations. Foundations laid before creation began. Foundations kept hidden, waiting. Uriel hammers this point repeatedly. Ezra keeps trying to understand present suffering through normal cause and effect. Why does God allow the wicked to prosper? Why do the righteous suffer? Can't divine justice intervene now? The angel's answer is consistent. You're asking the wrong questions. This age doesn't operate according to eternal justice. It operates according to temporary principles that permit evil to flourish for a predetermined period. Justice belongs to the coming age. Trying to find it in this one is like weighing fire or capturing wind. Impossible. Category error. Fundamentally misunderstanding how reality currently works. This dualism provides the framework for everything in 4 Ezra. Once you accept the two-age structure, all the visions make sense. The eagle represents this age's dominant power, Rome, brutal and temporary. The lion represents the coming age's ruler, the Messiah, righteous and eternal. The eagle doesn't gradually become the lion. The lion destroys the eagle utterly. The mourning woman transforms into the glorious city. Again, not gradual improvement, instant replacement. One reality substituted for another. This age is the woman in grief. The coming age is the city in glory. No transition period, no gradual construction. Just sudden manifestation of what already exists in hidden form. This cosmology answers the theodicy problem, but it's a harsh answer. Why does God permit injustice now? Because this age is a temporary container for working out consequences of the evil heart. It's not the final reality, it's the penultimate one, the last stage before ultimate resolution. But temporary does little to comfort those suffering in the present. Tell someone being oppressed by Rome that it's temporary. Their children will be oppressed, their grandchildren too. Temporary measured on cosmic timescale still spans multiple traumatized generations on human timescale. The text acknowledges this. Ezra's protests reflect exactly this tension. Fine, this age is corrupt. Wonderful. The next age will be perfect. But what about us? What about the people living through the corruption, maintaining faith despite zero evidence that it matters, dying without seeing vindication? Uriel's response is cold. You'll be raised. Your suffering is temporary, measured against eternity. Your vindication is certain, even if it comes after death. This shifts the focus from earthly life to afterlife, from communal flourishing to individual resurrection, from covenant promises about land and descendants to promises about imperishable existence in a renewed creation. The two-age structure makes resurrection necessary. If divine justice will manifest, but this age is ending unredeemed, then justice requires bringing the dead back. Otherwise, all who died under oppression simply lose. Their suffering was meaningless. Their faithfulness earned nothing. Resurrection solves this. Everyone gets raised, righteous and wicked. Then the final judgment separates them. The righteous enter the age to come. The wicked face destruction or eternal torment, depending on which passage you're reading. But the resurrection isn't optional. It's required by the logic of the system. Two ages mean two resurrections. The general resurrection at history's end, and the resurrection into the age to come for those judged worthy. This cosmology has roots in earlier Jewish thought, but gets systematized here with unusual clarity. Daniel hinted at two-age structure. Various apocalypses explored it, but 4 Ezra and its sibling text 2 Baruch develop it into a comprehensive framework. The Messiah operates at the hinge point. He doesn't improve this age, he ends it. His 400-year reign functions as transition period, not part of this age's corruption, but not yet the fully realized age to come. A kind of messianic interregnum where the righteous who endured this age get to experience vindication before the final resurrection and judgment. Then even the Messiah's temporary kingdom ends. He and all who lived under his reign die. Death hasn't been fully defeated yet. That comes after the general resurrection when the incorruptible age begins for real. This detail often gets overlooked. The Messiah is mortal in 4th Ezra. He reigns, accomplishes his purposes, then dies along with everyone else. The age to come doesn't feature the Messiah because it doesn't need him. His role was transitional, bridge the gap between this age's end and the eternal age's beginning. The cosmology's starkness offers strange comfort. Nothing about this age can be fixed. Rome won't gradually become more just. Human hearts won't slowly improve. The evil inclination won't be bred out across generations. So stop expecting improvement. Stop being surprised by injustice. Stop feeling like you're failing when faithfulness doesn't result in blessing. This age is condemned. Accept it. Endure it. Wait for its replacement. But that acceptance requires giving up certain hopes. No more expecting covenant promises to manifest in earthly life. No more imagining that if Israel just repents hard enough, God will restore national sovereignty. No more believing that following law ensures prosperity. Those hopes belong to the old covenant framework. They assumed this age be redeemed, that divine intervention would reform the existing order. The two-age cosmology abandons that assumption. This age cannot be redeemed. It can only be endured until its divinely appointed end. This represents a major shift in Jewish theological imagination. The prophets promised restoration, return from exile, renewed covenant, Davidic king, flourishing land. Those promises all assumed continuity, this world, this age, this order of reality, but purified and blessed. 4th Ezra says no, discontinuity, rupture, replacement. The coming age isn't this one healed, it's this one destroyed and something entirely new erected in its place. This thinking becomes foundational for later Jewish mysticism and apocalyptic movements. It also profoundly influences early Christianity, which develops its own version of two-age dualism, with the added twist that the age to come has already begun proleptically through the Messiah's resurrection, even though this age continues. But in 4th Ezra, the two ages don't overlap. One must end completely before the other can begin. The transition is total and absolute. The practical effect is to relocate hope entirely into the future, not the near future, the eschatological future. Not improvement you'll see, transformation your resurrection body will experience. Not gradual change, catastrophic divine intervention. This can produce either resignation or resistance. Resignation, nothing I do matters, because this age is lost anyway. Resistance, since this age is condemned, I'll maintain faithfulness no matter how pointless it seems, trusting that my vindication lies beyond death in the age to come. Fourth Ezra clearly advocates the latter. The righteous who endure receive reward. Those who maintain covenant faithfulness despite this age's corruption demonstrate their worthiness for the coming age's incorruption. The two-age cosmology also explains why the law couldn't prevent disaster. Laws for this age can't produce the righteousness required for the next age. They can identify those who strive toward that righteousness despite failing to achieve it. They mark out the community that will be preserved through the transition. But they don't save, can't save, because salvation requires moving from one age to another, and that movement is entirely divine action, not human achievement. This cosmology places enormous weight on divine sovereignty. God determines when this age ends. God brings the age to come. God judges who enters. Human agency consists mainly of enduring faithfully until God acts. Critics might call this fatalistic. Defenders call it realistic. When empires crush you, when temple burns, when every promise seems broken, believing you can fix things through human effort might be the real delusion. Trusting that God will ultimately resolve what humans cannot becomes the only viable hope. The two-age structure isn't unique to Judaism. Persian Zoroastrianism featured similar dualism. Greek philosophy explored material versus spiritual realms. But 4 Ezra's version is distinctly Jewish, rooted in covenant history, focused on communal redemption, centered on divine justice finally manifested. The cosmology leaves little room for gray areas. This age or that age, corruption or incorruption, wicked or righteous, the narrow path or the broad sea. The framework forces binary choices because it describes binary realities. You can't improve this age. You can only escape it. You can't fix the system. You can only outlast it. You can't make the present age serve justice. You can only trust that the coming age will. This is apocalyptic cosmology at its essence. The world is broken beyond repair, but God will replace it. Soon, very soon. Just hold on a little longer. The Messiahs of 4 Ezra, lion, man, and divine warrior. 3 visions, 3 figures, 1 role, or are they one figure? The text never quite says. Scholars have wrestled with this for centuries. Does 4 Ezra present one Messiah appearing differently in each vision, or multiple messianic figures fulfilling complementary roles? Or is the Messiah concept itself fluid, shaped by each vision's particular symbolic needs? The question matters because how you answer it shapes how you understand both the text and its moment in Jewish messianic development. Start with the lion. Vision 5. The multi-headed eagle, Rome in all its brutal imperial glory, meets its end when a lion emerges from the forest, not attacking immediately, first speaking, denouncing, listing Rome's crimes, pronouncing judgment, then destruction. The lion is explicitly identified as the anointed one kept by the Most High for the end of days. He comes from the line of David. He's preserved until the moment of maximum evil when intervention becomes necessary. His role is primarily judicial, convicting Rome of injustice, declaring sentence, executing judgment. The vision emphasizes voice before violence. The lion roars truth before bringing destruction. This matters. The Messiah's first act is testimony, bearing witness to Rome's crimes, making their guilt undeniable. Only after the verdict does the sentence get carried out. Then the man from the sea. Vision 6, rising from depths, carried on clouds, confronted by innumerable nations who gather to destroy him. He doesn't fight them, he burns them with the stream from his mouth, effortless annihilation. Then he stands on a carved mountain, gathering a peaceful remnant. This figure is also called the Anointed One. But he's described differently, pre-existent, hidden with God before creation, not from David's line exactly, more cosmic in origin. His military action is absolute, no battle, just obliteration, and he has 2 distinct functions, warrior and shepherd, destroyer and gatherer. Finally, Vision 3 mentions the Messiah more briefly. After the cosmic signs and tribulations, he'll be revealed. He'll reign for 400 years in joy with all survivors of the catastrophe. Then he and everyone with him will die. Death hasn't been defeated yet. That comes after the general resurrection. This Messiah seems more traditionally kingly, reigning over a blessed kingdom, bringing peace and prosperity for the faithful. But his reign is explicitly temporary. He's not the final answer, just the transitional one. His death, along with all his subjects, makes clear that even the Messiah belongs to the old order in some way. So, are these the same figure? Arguments for unity. All are called the Anointed One. All appear at history's climax, all judge enemies, all vindicate the faithful. The differences might be symbolic: lion for Rome's defeat, man from sea for cosmic scope, temporary king for earthly reign. Arguments for distinction. The eagle vision's lion seems very traditional, Davidic Messiah judging Israel's oppressors. The man from the sea seems cosmic and pre-existent, beyond human categories. The temporary king of Vision 3 dies, while the other's fates aren't specified. Most scholars lean toward different aspects of one concept rather than separate figures. The text doesn't worry about systematic consistency. Each vision serves specific purposes. The lion denounces Rome. The man from the sea demonstrates cosmic authority. The temporary king provides earthly vindication before final resurrection. Together, they paint a composite picture. The Messiah judges enemies. Lion commands cosmic powers, man from sea, and reigns over the faithful, temporary king. He operates at the boundary between this age and the next, ending one, inaugurating the other, but not quite belonging to either. This Messiah is distinctly non-Christian. No incarnation, no death and resurrection as salvific acts, no universal atonement, no gentle teacher calling people to repentance. This is warrior, judge, destroyer, and king. His mercy extends only to the faithful remnant who endured without him. Everyone else faces annihilation. The 400-year reign is particularly fascinating. Why temporary? Why does the Messiah die? Because he's not God. He's the anointed one, appointed, chosen, empowered, but not eternal in his own right. His kingdom serves a purpose, rewarding the faithful who suffered in this age before the final judgment. But it's not the age to come itself. It's the messianic interregnum, a transitional phase. Death hasn't been fully defeated. The age to come hasn't fully arrived. The incorruptible hasn't replaced the corruptible. So even the Messiah and his blessed subjects must die so they can be raised in the general resurrection and enter the truly eternal age. This detail prevents deifying the Messiah. He's exalted, yes. Cosmic in some visions, yes. But mortal, limited, functional rather than ultimate. Compare this to developing Christian Christology at the same moment. By the time 4th Ezra circulates, Christians are worshiping Jesus as divine, eternal, pre-existent, and risen. His death was salvific. His resurrection was permanent. He doesn't die again after a temporary reign. He reigns eternally. 4th, Ezra's Messiah can't be that. He defeats enemies. He doesn't redeem them. He judges. He doesn't save through sacrifice. He establishes temporary justice before ultimate judgment, not eternal redemption. This represents one trajectory of Jewish messianic thought, the warrior-judge model. The Messiah as God's appointed agent of judgment and vindication. Not gentle, not suffering, certainly not atoning for others' sins through his own death. Powerful, victorious, temporary. The pre-existence mentioned in Vision 6 complicates this. If the Messiah was kept hidden with God before creation, that suggests ontological status beyond normal humanity. Not divine, but not quite human either. Something in between, a heavenly figure appointed for earthly and cosmic purposes. This moves toward the Son of Man figure in 1st Enoch, a pre-existent heavenly being who will judge the world. But 4 Ezra keeps the Messiah more grounded. He has cosmic functions, but ultimately proves mortal. The stream of fire from his mouth recalls divine attributes. Only God's word carries creative power. But the text carefully maintains distinction. The man from the sea is the anointed one sent by God, not God himself. The two functions, warrior and shepherd, destroyer and gatherer, reflect the Messiah's dual purpose. End the old age by eliminating its powers. Begin the new age by protecting the faithful. Both are necessary. Neither is optional. The gathering of the peaceful multitude matters as much as the destruction of enemies. The Messiah doesn't just judge, he shelters. Doesn't just condemn, he embraces those who remain true. The violence isn't purposeless or sadistic. It's instrumental, clearing away opposition so the faithful can finally rest. The lion's roar before destruction serves similar purpose. It's not warning. Rome won't repent. It's testimony, making the judgment public, ensuring everyone understands why the sentence falls. Justice requires not just right verdict, but visible, comprehensible verdict. The carved mountain in Vision 6 carries theological weight. Mountains represent divine presence. Moses on Sinai, Elijah on Horeb. But this mountain is carved without human hands. It exists before the Messiah stands on it. It's prepared foundation, not human construction. The Messiah doesn't build his kingdom, he reveals it. stands on ground God prepared. The kingdom was always there, hidden, waiting. The Messiah makes visible what was previously concealed. This shifts the Messiah's role. He's not primary creator, but ultimate revealer. Not architect, but inheritor. Not building something new, but unveiling something eternal. The 400-year reign's specific duration invites speculation. Some suggest it echoes 400 years in Egypt. Others note various biblical 40-day or 40-year periods multiplied by 10. Most likely it's symbolic, a complete period sufficient to demonstrate divine justice, but not eternal because the age to come hasn't fully arrived yet. The righteous get to experience vindication before they die and face judgment. They see their oppressors destroyed. They live under just rule. They witness the Messiah's reign. Then they die in peace, knowing they'll be raised for the final age. The wicked who survived the tribulations also die during the 400 years. But in their case, death leads to resurrection for judgment and condemnation. Same physical process. Opposite outcomes. The Messiah himself dying matters for maintaining Jewish monotheism. He can't be worshipped as God because he's subject to death like everyone else. He's incomparably exalted, but remains creature, not creator. Agent, not source. Appointed, not eternal. This preserves boundaries that later Christianity crosses. For Christians, Jesus is raised and doesn't die again. He reigns eternally. His divine nature ensures his permanence. His death was voluntary sacrifice, not natural limitation. Fourth Ezra's Messiah has no such divine nature. His death is proof of his creaturely status. His resurrection comes with everyone else's at the general raising of the dead. The composite portrait across 3 visions presents a Messiah adequate to the catastrophe of 70 CE, powerful enough to destroy Rome, lion. Cosmic enough to command creation, man from sea, just enough to reward the faithful, temporary king, but not God, not eternal, not the final answer. The final answer is the age to come itself, when corruption is replaced by incorruption, when evil is eliminated entirely, when death is finally defeated, when God's justice manifests without mediation. The Messiah gets you there, but he's not the destination. A Jewish text in Christian hands, transmission and transformation. The strangest irony, a deeply Jewish apocalypse survives mainly because Christians preserved it. Fourth Ezra was written in Hebrew or Aramaic by a Jewish author wrestling with Jewish theological crisis, but no Hebrew or Aramaic manuscripts survive. What we have are translations: Latin, Syriac, Ethiopic, Georgian, Armenian, Arabic, all preserved by Christian communities. The original language version apparently vanished, lost during subsequent centuries of Jewish persecution, manuscript destruction, or simply because later rabbinic Judaism found apocalyptic texts like this one dangerous or irrelevant after the Bar Kokhba revolt. But Christians found 4 Ezra compelling. They translated it, copied it, studied it, included it in some biblical manuscripts, quoted it in theological arguments. And eventually, sometime around the 2nd or 3rd century, Christian authors added prologue and epilogue. 5th Ezra and 6th Ezra. Christian bookends on a Jewish core. 5th Ezra, chapters 1 to 2, reframes the entire text. Now it's about God rejecting Israel and choosing the gentle church instead. The mother, Israel, is rejected. Her children will be given to another people. The prophecies of judgment against nations, now they include judgment against Israel itself for rejecting the Messiah. Subtle, clever, completely reversing the original's meaning. 4th Ezra was written by Jews devastated by Rome's destruction of Jerusalem, seeking explanation for catastrophe while maintaining faith in covenant and election. 5th Ezra transforms it into supersessionist polemic. Israel got destroyed because they rejected Jesus. They're no longer God's people. The church inherits the promises. 6th Ezra, chapters 5-16, adds apocalyptic warnings about coming catastrophes, probably written even later, perhaps 3rd century. Its concerns reflect later Roman persecutions. Its warnings about beasts from the east might reference Sassanid Persia. It's Christian apocalyptic using the Ezra name for authority, but bearing no relation to the original author's concerns. These additions weren't marked as later insertions. They were presented as part of the seamless whole. Early readers encountering the text in Latin assumed all 16 chapters came from the same author with the same perspective. This reshaped interpretation fundamentally. The original author never mentions Jesus, never references Christian claims. His Messiah is distinctly Jewish. warrior judge, temporary king, cosmic but not divine. But reading through Christian lenses, especially with chapters 1 to 2 framing everything, Christians saw Jesus everywhere. The pre-existent Messiah from the sea, obviously Christ. The temporary 400-year reign, symbolic of the church age. The lion judging Rome, Christ's second coming. The woman mourning her son who transforms into a glorious city. Christians read this as Jerusalem or Israel transformed through Christ into the church. The original meaning, the heavenly temple revealed after the earthly temple's destruction, got overlaid with Christian ecclesiology. Uriel's answers to Ezra's questions became prophecies of the Christian message. When Uriel says this age is corrupt and only the coming age saves, Christians heard original sin and salvation through Christ. When Uriel emphasizes few will be saved, Christians heard narrow gate theology. The 70 hidden books, Christian mystics and apocalyptic thinkers assumed these contained secrets revealed to the church, but hidden from unbelieving Israel. The 24 public books remained the Hebrew scriptures, but now seen as incomplete without New Testament fulfillment. Fourth, Ezra's inclusion in Latin Vulgate manuscripts, not in the main canon, but in appendices alongside other deuterocanonical works, gave it semi-official status in Western Christianity. Not quite scripture. Not quite reliable, but valuable, edifying, worth preserving and studying. Protestant reformers encountered it there. Some quoted it. Luther mentioned it. Others dismissed it as apocryphal. But its presence in Vulgate appendices ensured continued transmission. Eastern Christianity preserved it in Syriac, Ethiopic, and other languages, sometimes with different emphasis. The Syriac church seemed more interested in its apocalyptic timeline. The Ethiopic church included it in biblical manuscripts more readily. But everywhere, Christians preserved what Jewish communities had apparently abandoned. Why did Jews stop copying for Ezra? Several theories compete. First, timing. After the Bar Kokhba revolt, 132 to 135 CE, apocalyptic messianism became dangerous. It had led to catastrophic rebellion. Rabbinic Judaism that emerged afterward focused on law, not apocalyptic speculation. Texts like For Ezra, which emphasized the law's insufficiency and awaited violent messianic intervention, didn't fit the new program. Second, Christian appropriation. Once Christians started using For Ezra to prove their claims against Judaism, Jews might have abandoned it to avoid aiding opponents. Why preserve texts the enemy weaponizes against you? Third, theological shift. Rabbinic Judaism developed different answers as to post-70 CE crisis. Focus on Torah study. Emphasis on this worldly ethics. Hope for gradual messianic improvement rather than apocalyptic rupture. Fourth, Ezra's stark dualism and despair about this age didn't match rabbinic optimism about human potential and Torah's redemptive power. Fourth, manuscript vulnerability. Jewish communities faced repeated persecutions, expulsions, forced conversions. Manuscripts got destroyed, libraries burned. What survived often depended on who protected it, and Christians protected what served their purposes. The result, a profoundly Jewish text, survives primarily through Christian transmission and interpretation. Modern scholarship worked backward to recover the Jewish original, stripping away chapters 1, 2, and 15 to 16 as later Christian additions, identifying Latin as translation, not original, recognizing the core, chapters 3-14, as Jewish apocalyptic, responding to 70 CE catastrophe. But for most of Christian history, readers had no idea. They read all 16 chapters as unified whole. They assumed a Christian perspective throughout. They interpreted every vision through Christological lenses. This created fascinating interpretive outcomes. Christians found comfort in a text written to comfort Jews. They saw predictions of Jesus in visions meant to encourage Jewish faithfulness. They read church triumph in words meant to explain Jewish trauma. The irony goes deeper. Fourth Ezra's author wrote to affirm God's faithfulness to Israel despite catastrophe, to assure readers that covenant wasn't broken, just awaiting fulfillment in the age to come, to promise that Jewish suffering under Rome would be vindicated through messianic judgment. Christian interpretation inverted this. Now the text proved Israel's rejection. Now catastrophe demonstrated divine abandonment of Jews in favor of Christians. Now the Messiah's judgment targeted Jews who rejected him. Same words, opposite meanings. The transmission history reveals how texts migrate between communities and transform in the process. Fourth Ezra started Jewish, became Christian, now interests scholars of both traditions, plus historians of apocalyptic literature generally. Each community reads it differently. Jews recovering it recognize their ancestors' anguish and hope. Christians see early church context and prophetic fulfillment. Scholars analyze its place in Second Temple Judaism's collapse and both Jewish and Christian apocalyptic development. The Latin version, longest preserved, most widely circulated, shaped Western Christianity's apocalyptic imagination for centuries. Its images of cosmic catastrophe, messianic judgment, and few saved influenced medieval art, Reformation theology, and modern fundamentalist eschatology, all filtered through Christian lenses attached to a Jewish foundation. The question of original language remains contested. Most scholars assume Hebrew or Aramaic based on Semitisms in Latin and Syriac versions, but no fragments survive. Everything is reconstruction and inference. The earliest clear reference to the text comes from late 2nd century in Christian writers. They already treat it as ancient and authoritative. They quote it to support theological positions, but they never mention its Jewish origin or recent composition. By 3rd century, chapters 1 to 2 exist and get quoted as part of the whole. The Christian frame is in place. The reinterpretation is complete. The text that survives is palimpsest, Jewish writing overlaid with Christian interpretation, transmitted by Christian scribes, read through Christian assumptions, but containing within it a voice from 70 CE crying out in anguish over Jerusalem's fall. Modern readers can strip away the layers, recognize the Christian additions, read chapters 3 to 14 in their Jewish context, hear Ezra's original protests and Uriel's original answers. But we should remember, for 17 centuries, almost no one did that. Christians read it as Christian. Jews didn't read it at all. The text survived, but its meaning transformed. That's the price of preservation. The community that saves your words might reshape your message. The scribes who copy your manuscript might add their own agenda. The tradition that remembers you might remember you wrongly. 4th Ezra exists today because Christians found it useful, not for the reasons its author wrote it, but useful nonetheless. The Jewish cry of protest became Christian confirmation. The assurance of God's faithfulness to Israel became proof of Israel's replacement. The hope for messianic vindication became prophecy of Christ. Same text. Different text, both and neither. Transmission is always transformation. Literary siblings, 4 Ezra and 2 Baruch. 2 scribes, 2 visions, same catastrophe. Ezra and Baruch, both legendary figures from Israel's past, both brought forward to process the trauma of 70 CE, both given apocalyptic visions explaining why the temple burned, both receiving divine assurance that this isn't the end. 4th Ezra and 2 Baruch. The Syriac apocalypse of Baruch are literary twins. Not identical twins, more like fraternal, sharing DNA, raised in the same environment but developing distinct personalities. Both written after 70 CE, probably within years of each other. Both set symbolically during the First Temple's destruction by Babylon in 586 BCE, both using past catastrophe as lens for understanding present catastrophe. Both convinced this age is corrupt and only divine intervention through the age to come will bring justice. But their emphases diverge. 4th Ezra is philosophical, intellectual. Ezra argues with God through Uriel. He demands explanations. He challenges divine justice. His questions are abstract. Why evil? Why suffering? Why do the wicked prosper while the righteous perish? The visions grow increasingly cosmic and symbolic. The tone is anguished but cerebral. 2nd Baruch is pastoral, communal. Baruch receives visions, yes, but he spends significant energy writing letters to the people, offering practical comfort, providing instructions for maintaining community. His questions are more immediate. How should we live now? What practices should continue? How do we remain faithful without temple? The visions are equally cosmic, but the follow-up is more grounded. Both texts develop two-age dualism. Both emphasize the present age's corruption. Both promise future vindication. But 4 Ezra focuses more on individual salvation, while 2nd Baruch maintains stronger communal focus. 4th Ezra, will I be saved? Will my suffering be vindicated? Can I understand why this happened? The perspective is interior, first person, wrestling with personal theodicy. 2nd Baruch, will we survive as a people? How do we maintain identity without temple? What instructions can sustain us? The perspective is collective, communal, concerned with group survival and continuity. Both texts use tree visions. In 4 Ezra, the vision remains cryptic. In 2nd Baruch, the interpretation is more explicit. Last empire will fall, messianic kingdom will rise. The mechanics are similar, but 2nd Baruch explains more directly. Both feature temporary messianic kingdoms. 4th Ezra's lasts 400 years. 2nd Baruch's duration is less specific but similarly temporary. Both messiahs are warriors who defeat enemies and gather faithful. Both eventually die or depart before the final resurrection. But 2nd Baruch gives more attention to the messiah's teaching role. He's not just warrior judge, he instructs the people, provides wisdom, functions more like idealized king, less like cosmic destroyer. The afterlife mechanics differ slightly. 4th Ezra emphasizes how few will be saved, the narrow way, the difficult path. The tone is almost despairing about humanity's prospects. Most will fail, few will endure. 2nd Baruch is more optimistic. Still dualistic, righteous versus wicked, saved versus damned, but less emphasis on how difficult salvation is, more emphasis on how following Torah prepares you for the age to come. Keep the law, maintain faith, trust God's ultimate justice. 4th Ezra questions the law's sufficiency. Can it actually save or just identify those who try? The evil heart seems too strong, human nature too corrupt. 2nd Baruch affirms the law's value more confidently. Yes, this age is corrupt, but Torah provides the path through corruption. Those who follow it will be vindicated. The framework is more traditionally covenantal. Both texts deal with the temple's destruction, but differently. 4th Ezra's woman becoming city vision reveals the heavenly temple that existed before earthly one. The physical temple was shadow. Its destruction reveals the real one. 2nd Baruch has angels take temple vessels into heaven before Babylon arrives. The sacred objects are preserved. They'll return when the righteous kingdom comes. Continuity, not replacement. 4th Ezra emphasizes rupture. 2nd Baruch emphasizes continuity. Both texts preserved primarily in Christian transmission. 4th Ezra in Latin and other Western languages. 2nd Baruch in Syriac, the language of Eastern Christianity. Different Christian communities, different emphases, different interpretive traditions. Scholars debate whether the authors knew each other's work. The similarities suggest either one rid the other, or both drew from common apocalyptic traditions circulating in late 1st century Judaism. The differences suggest independent composition. If one copied the other, we'd expect more exact parallels. Most likely, both authors moved in similar circles, probably knew similar traditions, possibly heard each other's work recited, but each crafted original compositions responding to shared crisis with distinct emphases. The eagle vision in 4th Ezra has parallels in 2nd Baruch's forest and vine vision. Both use symbolic geography, forests, mountains, waters, to represent empires and nations. Both culminate in Rome's destruction, but the symbolism develops differently. 4th Ezra's eagle with multiple heads and wings directly represents Roman succession, emperors following emperors. 2nd Baruch's forest represents broader concept of earthly kingdoms generally, not mapping so specifically onto Roman history. The revelation of hidden things differs. 4th Ezra gives Ezra 94 books, 24 public, 70 hidden. 2nd Baruch gives Baruch revelation about cosmic mechanics, afterlife regions, resurrection details. Both receive esoteric knowledge. But 4 Ezra emphasizes textual transmission. 2nd Baruch emphasizes visionary comprehension. 4th Ezra becomes scribe prophet, restoring lost Torah. 2nd Baruch's Baruch becomes teacher prophet, instructing the people how to maintain faithfulness. Same basic role, mediator between heaven and community, but enacted differently. The handling of questions about justice differs. Ezra's challenges are met with firm insistence on human inability to comprehend divine ways. Uriel doesn't really answer Ezra's questions, he reframes them. You're asking wrong questions. This age operates differently than you assume. Baruch's questions receive more direct answers. God explains the timeline, reveals the mechanics, shows how present suffering fits into larger plan. The tone is more reassuring, less confrontational. 4th Ezra feels more like philosophical dialogue, Socratic method pushing questioner toward different understanding. 2nd Baruch feels more like instruction, teacher explaining difficult material to devoted students. Both texts conclude with the protagonist's departure. Ezra is taken up after 40 days of inspired writing. Baruch ascends after completing his letters and instructions. Neither dies normal death. Both transition directly from earthly teaching to heavenly reality. The community is left with texts. 4th Ezra, 94 books to guide them. 2nd Baruch, Baruch's letters and teachings to sustain them. Both texts become their own justification. We have these apocalypses because the apocalypses describe receiving these apocalypses. Reading the two texts together provides stereo understanding of post-70 CE Jewish apocalyptic thought. The questions that tormented survivors, the theological frameworks developed to accommodate catastrophe, the hope maintained despite overwhelming evidence that covenant had failed. 4th Ezra tilts toward philosophical problem of evil. 2nd Baruch tilts toward practical problem of communal survival. Neither ignores the other's concerns. Both address both issues. But the center of gravity differs. For communities reading these texts, they complemented each other. Need intellectual wrestling with theodicy? Read 4 Ezra. Need practical guidance for maintaining community? Read 2nd Baruch. Need assurance of future vindication? Both provide it with different emphasis. The texts also preserve different solutions to the manuscript crisis. 4th Ezra says the law was completely lost and required miraculous restoration. 2nd Baruch implies the knowledge continued, damaged, scattered, but not completely destroyed. Different assessments of the catastrophe's totality. Both became less popular in later rabbinic Judaism, which moved away from apocalyptic speculation. Both preserved by Christians who found their message compelling. Both recovered by modern scholarship as windows into Jewish thought during crisis. Standing side by side, 4 Ezra and 2 Baruch represent Judaism at a crossroads. Temple gone, Jerusalem destroyed, covenant apparently broken. Will the response be philosophical wrestling, Ezra, or pastoral guidance, Baruch? Will emphasis fall on individual salvation or communal continuity? Will the law be seen as insufficient or adequate? The texts answer differently, and in their differences, they show the range of responses available. Not one way to process trauma, multiple ways, philosophical and pastoral, individual and communal, questioning and affirming, both legitimate, both necessary. Perhaps that's why two texts emerged so close together. One voice couldn't contain the complexity. It took twins to capture the full range of Jewish response to catastrophe. Ezra for those who needed to argue with God, Baruch for those who needed to be assured by God. Same family, different children, legacy and influence. From the Kabbalah to the Reformation, the book that almost vanished instead became foundational. 4th Ezra disappeared from Jewish communities, but its ideas, its imagery, its cosmology, its questions, those echoed through centuries of Jewish mystical thought even when the text itself was forgotten. The heavenly temple vision, the concept of hidden knowledge reserved for the wise, the two-age dualism, the emphasis on individual judgment after death. All these became threads woven into later mystical Judaism. The Kabbalah develops elaborate maps of heavenly realms, spheres and emanations, hidden names of God, secret meanings beneath surface text. While Kabbalists don't cite 4 Ezra, they probably never read it. The basic idea that deeper mysteries exist beneath obvious meaning, that certain knowledge must be restricted to those spiritually prepared, that heavenly realities precede and transcend earthly ones, all this resonates with 4 Ezra's framework, the 70 hidden books. Kabbalistic tradition speaks of layers of Torah interpretation, simple, allegorical, homiletical, mystical, surface meaning for everyone, deeper meanings for initiates, secrets revealed only to those whose souls can bear them, same structure, different content, the apocalyptic timeline, signs of the end, messianic battles, resurrection, final judgment, became template for later Jewish messianic movements. Every few centuries, someone claims the signs are appearing. The end is near. The Messiah is coming. They're reading different texts, but the pattern traces back to apocalypses like 4 Ezra. In Christianity, 4 Ezra's influence ran deeper because Christians actually preserved and read the text. Early church fathers quoted it. Ambrose referenced it. Augustine knew it. They treated it with respect, not quite scriptural, but edifying, useful for understanding God's justice, the afterlife, the resurrection. Medieval Christianity found its apocalyptic imagery compelling. The eagle vision got interpreted as prophecy of successive empires leading to Christ's return. The woman transformed into city became allegory for church. The man from the sea obviously prefigured Christ's second coming in glory. Artists depicted scenes from 4 Ezra's visions: the eagle with many wings, the mourning woman, the man on the mountain surrounded by peaceful multitude. These images entered Christian visual vocabulary. The idea of few being saved, emphasized repeatedly in 4 Ezra, reinforced medieval anxiety about salvation: the narrow way, the difficult path, the broad road to destruction. Preachers used these themes to terrify congregations into repentance. 4th Ezra's pessimism about human nature fit well with Augustine's developed doctrine of original sin. The evil heart inherited from Adam, the inability to achieve righteousness through personal effort, the need for grace beyond human capacity. Christian mystics appreciated the hidden books concept, divine mysteries revealed only to the spiritually advanced. Secret knowledge reserved for those who pursued holiness. The idea that surface scripture conceals deeper meanings accessible only through divine revelation. Reformation thinkers encountered 4 Ezra in the Vulgate's appendix. Luther mentioned it. He appreciated its emphasis on few being saved and the difficulty of the path. Its pessimism about human righteousness fit Protestant rejection of works righteousness. But Protestants also questioned its authority, not in Hebrew scriptures, not accepted by Jews, added to Vulgate but marked as apocryphal, useful for edification but not doctrine. Read it, learn from it, but don't base theology on it alone. Catholic Counter-Reformation maintained 4 Ezra's semi-canonical status, not scripture exactly, but worthy of consideration. Part of the broader tradition, useful for understanding apocalyptic themes that appear in canonical revelation. The text's treatment of resurrection influenced Christian eschatology. The sequence, temporary messianic reign, death of Messiah and all who lived then, general resurrection, final judgment, eternal age. This pattern shaped how Christians mapped end times. 19th century saw scholarly recovery of 4 Ezra as Jewish text, recognition that chapters 3 to 14 are the original core, dating it to post-70 CE, understanding it as Jewish apocalyptic response to trauma, not Christian prophecy. This changed how the text was read. Now it became historical document, window into Second Temple Judaism's crisis, evidence for how Jews processed catastrophe, source for understanding Jewish apocalyptic thought apart from Christianity. Comparative work emerged, setting 4 Ezra alongside 2nd Baruch, 1 Enoch, Jubilees, Dead Sea Scrolls, mapping varieties of Jewish apocalyptic, showing diversity of response to similar crises, recognizing that Judaism in the first century wasn't monolithic, multiple groups, multiple texts, multiple solutions. Modern Jewish scholarship reclaimed the text. Here was a voice from the Rabbinic Judaism's formative moment, speaking concerns that rabbinic literature addresses differently. While rabbis focused on law and its interpretation, 4 Ezra focused on cosmic justice and apocalyptic hope. Some scholars suggested 4 Ezra represents a path Judaism didn't take. After Bar Kokhba's failed revolt, apocalyptic messianism became dangerous. Rabbinic Judaism that emerged emphasized Torah study, ethical living, this worldly hope for gradual improvement. 4 Ezra's stark dualism and violent messianic expectation fell out of favor, but others noted maybe the ideas persisted underground, in Kabbalah's hidden meanings, in periodic messianic movements, in the persistent belief that this age is corrupt and only divine intervention will bring true justice. The text's treatment of theodicy, the problem of evil, remained perpetually relevant. Every generation faces the question, why do the righteous suffer while the wicked prosper? 4 Ezra's answers, this age is corrupt. Justice comes only in the age to come. Trust divine sovereignty despite present evidence. These speak across centuries. Holocaust survivors and theologians grappled with 4 Ezra's themes. Here was a text born from catastrophe, wrestling with God's justice when promises seem broken. The questions Ezra asked, where is the covenant? Why permit this? How can the righteous maintain faith? These echoed through concentration camps and their aftermath. Some found comfort in the framework. This age is corrupt. Don't expect justice now. Trust that divine vindication comes eventually, even if posthumously. Others rejected it, too passive, too willing to accept present horror for future hope. The text's influence on science fiction and fantasy literature deserves mention. The two-age cosmology, the cosmic battle between good and evil, the temporary kingdom before final transformation, the hidden books containing secret knowledge. These tropes appear repeatedly in speculative fiction, often by authors who never read 4 Ezra but inherited concepts filtered through centuries of Western apocalyptic imagination. The 70 hidden books became archetype. Forbidden knowledge, restricted texts, mysteries only the initiated can comprehend. Every fantasy series with ancient tomes containing dangerous power owes something to this tradition. The temporary messianic kingdom influenced how Christians think about millennium, thousand-year reign and revelation. Is it literal or symbolic, before or after Christ's return? The ambiguity traces partly to conflicting apocalyptic traditions, with 4 Ezra representing one strand. Modern apocalyptic movements, predicting end times, reading signs, expecting imminent divine intervention, follow patterns established in texts like 4 Ezra. The conviction that this age is ending, that signs are appearing, that cosmic transformation is imminent. The specific predictions change. The basic structure remains constant. Academic study of apocalyptic literature as genre owes much to wrestling with texts like 4 Ezra. What makes writing apocalyptic? How does symbolic vision function? Why does crisis produce this particular literary form? 4th Ezra became test case for developing theories about apocalyptic thought and literature. The text's survival through Christian transmission raises questions about canon and authority. Who decides which texts matter? Why do some survive while others vanish? How does transmission change meaning? 4th Ezra exemplifies how cultural boundary crossing transforms texts, written by Jews, preserved by Christians, now studied by secular scholars. Its legacy isn't single trajectory, multiple streams flowing from one source. Jewish mysticism carries forward themes even without the text. Christian eschatology develops ideas filtered through Christological lenses. Academic study recovers historical context. Modern readers find existential resonance in Ezra's questions. The hidden books concept sparked imagination across traditions. What secrets might they contain? What knowledge was considered too powerful for general distribution? Why reserve truth for the few? These questions drive mystical traditions and conspiracy theories alike. The text's pessimism about this age, its insistence that present reality cannot be redeemed, only replaced, challenges both progressive optimism and reformist hope. You can't fix the system. You can only await its divinely orchestrated destruction. This creates tension between apocalyptic stance, the world is ending, and activist stance, we can improve things. 4th Ezra influenced how both Jews and Christians think about afterlife. Individual judgment, resurrection bodies, paradise and punishment, eternal distinctions between righteous and wicked. These concepts have multiple sources, but 4th Ezra contributed significantly to their development. The legacy continues. New translations appear. Scholarly commentary expands. Religious communities rediscover it. Each generation finds something: comfort, challenge, insight in Ezra's ancient questions and Uriel's difficult answers. A text born from catastrophe keeps speaking to catastrophe. Every age faces its own version of the problem. Why does evil prosper? Where is justice? How do we maintain faith when everything suggests it's misplaced? 4th Ezra doesn't resolve these questions, but it demonstrates that the questions themselves are ancient, legitimate, and deserving of serious theological engagement. The prophet who questioned God left a legacy bigger than any answer. Modern recovery, scholarly rediscovery and interpretation. The 19th century changed everything for 4 Ezra. For 17 centuries, it existed as Christian text, apocryphal, semi-canonical, useful but not quite authoritative, a curiosity, something to quote when convenient but not foundational to doctrine. Then scholars started asking, who actually wrote this? When? Why? What was the original language? And what are these strange Christian chapters doing at the beginning and end? Modern critical scholarship was born. Early work focused on the obvious problem: manuscript traditions. The text existed in Latin, Syriac, Ethiopic, Georgian, Armenian, Arabic, and fragmentary Coptic, but no Hebrew or Aramaic manuscripts survived. No original existed to consult. Scholars compared versions, noted where translations agreed and diverged, began reconstructing what must have stood behind all these versions. The consensus emerged. Original was probably Hebrew or Aramaic, written in Judea or nearby, late 1st century CE by a Jew responding to Jerusalem's destruction. The Latin version became primary source because it was longest, best preserved, and most widely copied. But scholars recognized it was translation, not original. They noted Semitisms, grammatical constructions that made sense in Hebrew but felt awkward in Latin. These confirmed translation theory. The composite nature of the text became clear. Chapters 1 to 2, 5 Ezra, were obviously Christian. They condemned Israel, predicted church replacing synagogue, used Christian terminology and concepts, must be later addition. Chapters 15, 16, 6 Ezra were similarly Christian and addressed later concerns, 3rd century persecutions probably. Different style, different preoccupations. Another addition. Chapters 3 to 14, 4 Ezra proper, formed coherent Jewish apocalypse. 7 visions, consistent themes, clear response to 70 CE catastrophe. This was the original. This recognition revolutionized interpretation. Now scholars could read 4 Ezra as Jewish text instead of Christian prophecy. The questions Ezra asked were Jewish questions. The Messiah envisioned was Jewish Messiah. The hope articulated was Jewish hope. Dating debates emerged. Everyone agreed post 70 CE, the temple's destruction drives the text. But how long after? The reign of Domitian, 81 to 96 CE, seemed likely based on internal evidence about Roman emperors, maybe as late as Trajan, 98 to 117 CE, but probably earlier. The precision matters less than the context, sometime in the generation after catastrophe, while trauma was fresh, before rabbinic responses fully developed. At the moment when Judaism faced existential crisis about covenant, law, and election, scholars began situating 4 Ezra within Second Temple Judaism's diversity. Not a single Judaism, but multiple competing approaches. Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, various apocalyptic groups, each processing the temple's destruction differently. 4th Ezra represented apocalyptic Judaism at its most developed, full two-age dualism, cosmic Messiah, temporary messianic kingdom, detailed afterlife mechanics, hidden books, all the characteristic apocalyptic elements systematized. Comparing it to other apocalypses, 1 Enoch, 2 Baruch, Apocalypse of Abraham, revealed common patterns. How crisis produces apocalyptic response. How communities under pressure imagine cosmic vindication. How present suffering gets reframed as birth pangs of coming transformation. The relationship between 4 Ezra and 2nd Baruch sparked scholarly debates. Same period. Same themes, similar frameworks. Did one author know the other's work? Were they responses to each other or independent compositions drawing from common tradition? Most scholars lean toward independence with shared tradition. The parallels suggest common apocalyptic milieu. The differences suggest distinct authors with distinct emphases. Attention turned to the vision structure. Why 7? How do they build? What's the progression? Scholars noted Ezra's transformation across the visions, from angry questioner to accepting visionary. The structure wasn't random. It traced intellectual and spiritual journey. The woman vision, vision 4, got recognized as pivot point. Before it, Ezra argues. After it, he accepts. The symbolic transformation, mourning woman to glorious city, mirrors Ezra's own transformation from despair to hope. Theological themes emerged as scholarly focus. The evil heart inherited from Adam, the corruption of this present age, the few who will be saved, the temporary messianic kingdom. These weren't just interesting details, they were systematic theology responding to specific crisis. Scholarly debates erupted about the text's unity. Did one author compose all 7 visions, or were they compiled from separate sources? The linguistic and thematic consistency suggested single author, but some tensions remained unexplained. The relationship to rabbinic Judaism became a major question. 4th Ezra and early rabbinic texts address same crisis, 70 CE, with different solutions. Rabbis emphasized Torah study and ethical living. 4th Ezra emphasized apocalyptic hope and cosmic transformation. Was this competition, different communities, or different literary genres addressing different needs within same community? Scholars divided. Some saw 4 Ezra as road not taken, apocalyptic Judaism that lost out to rabbinic approach. Others saw them as complementary, different responses serving different functions. Modern Jewish scholars reclaimed the text as part of Jewish heritage. For centuries, it existed only in Christian transmission. Now it could be read as Jewish voice from formative moment in Jewish history, a window into how Jews wrestled with catastrophe before rabbinic solutions crystallized. Christian scholars recognized how they'd misread the text. The Messiah wasn't Jesus. The judgment wasn't about rejecting Christ. The hope wasn't for church replacing Israel. Reading through Christian lenses had obscured the Jewish voice underneath. This created uncomfortable acknowledgement. Christians had preserved text while completely misinterpreting it. Transmission without comprehension. The words survived, but the meaning transformed. Scholarly editions proliferated. Critical texts comparing manuscripts, annotated translations, commentaries explaining historical context. Each generation of scholars added layers of interpretation. Form criticism analyzed the literary structures. Source criticism hunted for underlying sources. Redaction criticism examined editorial work. Historical criticism placed it in first-century Jewish context. Each method revealed different aspects. The apocalyptic worldview got serious philosophical attention, not just ancient curiosity. These were responses to genuine philosophical problems: evil, suffering, justice. How does one maintain faith in divine governance when evidence suggests chaos? Existential readings emerged. Ezra's questions as universal human questions. The anguish isn't specifically first-century Jewish, it's human. Anyone facing catastrophe and questioning meaning recognizes Ezra's voice. Feminist scholars noted the text's gendered imagery: the mourning woman, Zion as female. The transformation from grief to glory coded through female body. What does this reveal about how ancient authors imagined community, catastrophe, and restoration? Post-Holocaust interpreters found resonances. Another catastrophe, another questioning of God's justice, another demand for explanation that doesn't come easily. Fourth, Ezra's insistence that this age is corrupt and only future intervention brings justice spoke to those who survived 20th century horrors. Liberation theology engaged the text's concern for oppressed, the righteous suffering under wicked empire, the promise of divine vindication for the powerless, the reversal where last become first and oppressors face judgment. The hidden books concept fascinated scholars. What might they have contained? Are there hints in other apocalyptic texts? Did actual secret traditions exist? Or is this literary device claiming authority for the text itself, saying this is one of the 70 books? The temporary messianic kingdom puzzled Christian interpreters used to eternal Christ. Why does the Messiah die? What does temporary reign accomplish? Recognizing Jewish context helped. The Messiah isn't divine in Fort Ezra, so mortality makes sense. He's transitional figure, not ultimate answer. Digital humanities brought new approaches: word frequency analysis, pattern recognition. Comparing 4 Ezra's vocabulary to Dead Sea Scrolls, rabbinic texts, and other apocalypses. Statistical methods supplement traditional scholarship. Questions remain contested. Original language, Hebrew or Aramaic. Unity, one author or multiple sources. Relationship to rabbinic Judaism, opposition or complement. Influence on Christianity, direct or filtered through intermediary texts. But scholarly consensus holds on core points: Jewish text from late 1st century. Response to 70 CE catastrophe. Apocalyptic solution to theodicy problem. Preserved by Christians, misinterpreted through Christian lenses, recovered by modern scholarship as vital source for understanding Judaism at crisis moment. The recovery process itself is interesting. How did a text preserved solely by Christians return to Jewish consciousness? Through Christian scholars initially. Only gradually did Jewish scholars engage it. Now both communities claim it as part of their heritage, Jews as original authors, Christians as preservers and interpreters. The text occupies unusual space, not canonical for either tradition, but important to both, more widely read by scholars than believers, more cited in academic works than religious ones. Yet its questions remain urgent. Why do the righteous suffer? Where is justice? How do we maintain faith when evidence argues against it? These questions don't age. Every generation must answer them anew. Modern recovery means 4 Ezra is now accessible, translated, annotated, explained. Anyone can read it and hear Ezra's ancient voice asking timeless questions. The answers Uriel gives remain difficult, unsatisfying to many. The emphasis on few being saved troubles universalists. The acceptance of this age's corruption challenges progressives. The passive waiting for divine intervention frustrates activists. But scholars recognize this is honest theology, refusing easy answers, accepting mystery, maintaining faith despite unresolved tension. Fourth, Ezra's modern recovery reveals how texts can be lost and found, how meaning can be obscured then recovered, how voices from one community can speak to others across centuries. The prophet who questioned God now speaks to scholars who question everything, including the prophet. The prophet's questions. Why 4 Ezra matters today? Why does this ancient text still matter? Because the questions it asks never stopped being asked. Jerusalem fell in 70 CE, but cities keep falling, temples of many kinds keep burning, promises that seemed certain keep proving fragile. And every time catastrophe strikes, people ask Ezra's questions. Why? Where is justice? If there's divine order, why does chaos reign? If the righteous path exists, why do those who follow it suffer while those who mock it prosper? Fourth, Ezra matters because it refuses easy answers. It doesn't say, have faith and everything will work out in this life. It says, this life is corrupted. Justice comes later. Maybe long after you die, maybe after history ends. That's cold comfort. But it's honest comfort. The text validates anger at God. Ezra doesn't just quietly accept catastrophe. He protests, argues, demands explanation. This is legitimate response to horror, not passive acceptance, but active wrestling. Religious traditions sometimes discourage questioning God, treat doubt as failure of faith, suggest that proper believers simply trust without demanding explanation. Fourth Ezra says, no, question, argue, demand answers. God can handle your anger. Your protests are prayers. But the text also shows transformation. Ezra begins angry. He ends accepting mystery, not because he got satisfying answers, because he grasped that satisfying answers don't exist within this age's framework. This models something valuable. You can maintain faith while acknowledging its tensions. You don't have to pretend everything makes sense. You can accept mystery without abandoning conviction that meaning exists beyond your comprehension. The two-age dualism matters today because it offers alternative to both naive optimism and total despair. Naive optimism says things are getting better. Progress is real. Problems can be solved. Evil can be eliminated through education, reform, better systems. But the 20th century, Holocaust, Stalin's terrors, Mao's purges, genocides, nuclear weapons, climate catastrophe, makes naive optimism hard to sustain. Total despair says nothing matters, evil wins, suffering is meaningless. There's no justice, no meaning, no redemption. Fourth Ezra offers third option. This age is corrupt beyond repair, but this age isn't final. It will be replaced. Present suffering doesn't prove absence of justice. It proves need for cosmic transformation. This framework helps process trauma. After personal or collective catastrophe, people struggle with meaning. Did this happen for a reason? Is there purpose in suffering? Should I have seen it coming? Could I have prevented it? Fourth Ezra says, this age produces catastrophe, not because you failed, not because there's no meaning, but because the system is broken at foundational level. Individual efforts can't fix it. Only complete replacement will. This relieves certain kinds of guilt while maintaining moral seriousness. You're not responsible for fixing everything, but you are responsible for maintaining faithfulness despite knowing this age can't be fixed. The question of the few being saved troubles modern sensibilities. We prefer universal salvation. Everyone gets redeemed eventually. No eternal punishment. Love wins. Fourth Ezra's harsher vision, most will perish, few will be saved, the way is narrow, challenges this. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe the text reflects first century Jewish anxiety more than eternal truth. But maybe it's honestly confronting the difficulty of maintaining righteousness. Not physical difficulty, moral and spiritual difficulty. The evil heart is real. Corruption runs deep. Most people don't maintain faithfulness through catastrophe. This isn't cruel judgment, it's realistic assessment. Look at history. When crisis comes, how many people maintain integrity? How many resist evil at personal cost? How many hold to principles when principles become dangerous? The text's pessimism about humanity might be its realism. The Messiah imagery, warrior judge, destroying enemies, gathering faithful, reigning temporarily, differs sharply from modern religious preferences for gentle, inclusive, therapeutic, divine figures. But this Messiah speaks to those who've experienced real oppression, not philosophical concept of evil, actual boots on necks, actual conquest and trauma. Gentle Messiah says, let go of anger, forgive, move forward. Warrior Messiah says, your oppressors will face judgment, their power will be destroyed, you will be vindicated. Which message do you need? Depends on your position. Comfortable people prefer gentle Messiah. Oppressed people need warrior Messiah. Fourth Ezra was written by and for the oppressed. The hidden books concept matters today. What knowledge is dangerous? What truths should be reserved for those prepared to handle them? Do ethical or mystical truths require spiritual readiness? Modern instinct says democratize everything. All knowledge should be publicly available. No secret wisdom, no restricted texts. But maybe some truths do require preparation, not because they're intellectually difficult, because they're existentially challenging, because understanding them without context creates harm. The idea that surface text conceals deeper meaning, that obvious sense isn't only sense, remains powerful. Every religious tradition develops layers of interpretation: literal, allegorical, mystical, secret. Why? Because simple readings often miss crucial dimensions, because text means differently at different life stages, because tragedy reads differently before and after you've suffered it. Fourth Ezra accessed as surface story. Visions, angels, judgment communicates certain things. Accessed as deep meditation on theodicy, it communicates others. Both levels exist, both matter. The prophet's transformation from questioner to prophet matters. Most people start with questions. The lucky ones move toward acceptance and agency, from why is this happening to how do I respond? Ezra begins demanding God explain divine governance. He ends empowered to restore what was lost and reveal what was hidden. His questions weren't rejected. They prepared him for a larger role. This models intellectual and spiritual development. Start with honest questions. Don't suppress them, but don't get stuck in them either. Move through them. Let them transform you, emerge with different relationship to mystery. The text's preservation through Christian transmission, while being misinterpreted through Christian lenses, raises contemporary questions about cultural appropriation, transmission, and meaning. Can one community faithfully preserve another community's sacred texts? What's lost in transmission? What's gained? When does preservation become distortion? Fourth, Ezra survived because Christians found it useful, even while misreading it. That's complicated legacy. Gratitude for preservation mixed with frustration about misinterpretation. Modern recovery means we can read it with historical understanding, but we should acknowledge most readers for 17 centuries couldn't. The text existed, but its meaning was obscured. What other voices have been similarly preserved but obscured? Whose texts survive with meanings transformed? How do we recover what transmission concealed? Fourth, Ezra matters today because catastrophe continues. Nations fall, temples burn, people suffer, promises break. And every time the questions resurface: where is justice? Why do the wicked prosper? How do we maintain faith when evidence argues against it? What hope exists for the oppressed? The text doesn't provide comfortable answers, but it provides honest engagement. It takes the questions seriously. It refuses to paper over the difficulties with easy platitudes. It says, yes, this age is corrupt. Yes, most people fail. Yes, the path is narrow. Yes, justice is deferred. But justice exists. Vindication is coming. This age will end. The next will begin. Believe that or don't. But don't pretend the questions are easy. Don't claim simple faith makes the problems disappear. Ezra questioned God. Uriel responded. The responses were difficult. Ezra accepted them, transformed from questioner to prophet, restored what was lost, revealed what was hidden, then was taken up. That arc, from trauma through question through transformation to agency, speaks across centuries. The specific answers might be disputed, the framework might be challenged, the theology might be modified by later traditions. But the questions themselves, those are eternal. Why does evil prosper? Where is justice? Can we maintain faith through catastrophe? What hope exists for those who suffer? These questions never stop being asked because catastrophe never stops occurring. Fourth, Ezra matters because it's a voice from one catastrophe speaking to every catastrophe. Honest, anguished, questioning, and ultimately, strangely, hopeful. Not naive hope, not cheap optimism, but the hope that comes after honestly confronting horror and deciding meaning exists despite it. The hope that says this age is ending, the next is coming, justice will manifest, the faithful will be vindicated. Whether you believe that or not, the questions that drove Ezra remain your questions too. That's why this ancient apocalypse matters today. The prophet questioned God. God answered. The answer was difficult, and the conversation continues.